I'm Marie Vigouroux.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And this is Rude Eats, a delicious podcast where we sink our teeth into every episode of the show Hannibal.
I want Will Graham, I really do. And I think that we could have some fun. Then you can do anything you like. I might even go and help you catch the shrike. I want Will Graham, I want that man. For every meal and on demand. His mind shines and his body's cut. I know that he works for the FBI, but what other man has pure empathy and the ability to see my mind? Jack, what other thing have I ever asked you for? Besides, never looking into my pantry? And I won't get that either. Damn. I want Will Graham, I want him so. And he really doesn't need to know what's in my meals or on my mind. I just want Will Graham to be mine. I want him and I want him now. I said before, I don't care how. I'll give him tests, he'll draw a clock. And then his dark desires I will unlock. We'll be together, Will and me. We'll throw some grand dinner parties. We'll cut the flesh, we'll cook the meat. He'll eat the food just like me. Give me goddamn Will Graham.
Ooh, Mary. How are you feeling today? What's going on? What's happening? What's your Hannibal thoughts? Lay them on me.
Listen, I have a little bone to pick with you here.
Okay.
Because remember this summer when you were like, hey, Barry, why don't we do a Hannibal podcast?
I do. I remember that, yes.
Yeah. And I was like, sure, that'll be great.
We're still 2 seasons away from me being able to link you the song that inspired that, by the way, because it's such a spoiler.
Oh my god, that's so true. Yeah, I just want to be clear that my life is forever changed at this point. Like I can just, something in me has changed, and I feel that I am identifying a little too much with Will Graham.
Listeners, I'm not going to ring a bell or anything, but I expect you guys to remember that Mary said she is forever changed for stuff that happens in the future. So just somebody remind me to link this at some point.
Oh my god! What have I done?
Yeah, it's hard because Hannibal is so charming. He's just so handsome and charming and put together and well spoken and all this stuff. Like he checks all of the boxes for the one that you would bring home to mama, except for the cannibalism and except for the medical gaslighting, except for the literal brainwashing. All of that stuff seems like a negative, but stable job, good income, probably good insurance. You know what I'm saying? The other stuff is doing really good. So I don't know. It's hard. I'm just going to bring back the title of our last episode, which is, it doesn't have to be healthy to be hot. It's true. It's very true. It does not have to be healthy, especially when it's fictional. Who cares, right?
Yes, exactly. I agree.
That's the big thing. Is we can absolutely crush on anybody we want to. Mike. Call you out by name.
Hold on. He said me something else. Because he was like, by the way, like having a crush on Mads is understandable, but having a crush on Hannibal is toxic. Yes. And I'm like, well, also like, he's like, I'm going to send you to jail. I'm like, to Horny jail. And then I'm like, also keep in mind that like I'm going through this for the first time, right? Like this is like, I don't know the full extent of the evil of this man, right? Like I'm discovering it as we go. And he's like, you know enough.
Oh, well.
And this... Yes.
I know how you are with series, and I have a feeling that once we finish this podcast, you will probably go back and like binge watch this, even if you rewatch the seasons as we go along, right? Like I have a feeling you're going to have like 4 or 5 rewatches of the show in you.
Yes.
And knowing, I'll be so curious, like once we get to season 3 and we finish it, if you ever go back to season 1, how like early season 1 Mads will affect you, or Hannibal will affect you, because it does get worse. Like spoiler, like things are gonna get worse. But also, like having seen the show several times, like even I am not immune to Hannibal's charms in season 1, right? So
yeah, I think especially you are not immune to his
he's getting me.
I love that.
Ironically, like the more you talk about it, the more the more we analyze the show. So funny the way that works.
I know. So we would just like to wish everybody a happy new year, even though we're still in October.
Yeah, listeners, we're recording this 3 days after we recorded the episode on season 1, episode 10. So if you, or 11, I guess this is 12. Yeah, so 3 days after the last episode we recorded, and we still have our 2-week schedule. So we're just rocking about. Who cares? Why don't you describe the episode for us this week?
Yes, of course. So this week we are covering Hannibal season 1, episode 12, Relevé. Following an offhand comment by Graham, a comb is left in the chamber of Georgia Madchen, who accidentally sparks a fire inside her hyperbaric chamber and is burned to death. Angered, Graham deduces that several recent murders were all the work of the copycat patterning? That's very hard to pronounce. Oh my God. Now I'm putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllables all over again.
Patterning, I think is right, yeah.
Patterning, thank you. After recent serial murders and that Georgia was killed because she may have remembered the face of whoever, wink, 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 had killed Dr. Sutcliffe. This episode was directed by Michael Reimer, written by Chris Brancato, and it first aired on June 13th, 2013.
Before we get into our theme, and before we get into like the main part of the episode, my friend Will, shout out to Will Hughes over at the AV Club, and also the world's worst podcast, Everything to Guppy. He DM'd me last night with a fact about Hannibal that will make no sense to you right now, but I want to say it because I did not know this, and the listeners who are aware will kind of freak out if they're aware of this, but Brian Fuller confirmed that the murder that Will investigates in the very first episode is actually the first murder that's committed by Francis Dollarhide, who you do not know yet, Mary, so I'm sorry to do this to you, but that's going to mean a lot later.
I think I read that fact somewhere at one point, right before or right as we were starting this. And I was just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this means, but cool.
Francis Dollarhide is also known as the Red Dragon, which the show Hannibal is named after, or is the name of the book that Hannibal is based on. So, just a real fun little hey, what's up for Hannibal Lecter fans out there.
Ooh, is that? Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, because if Hannibal is in prison in the book, then that means that he's helping Will Graham to catch somebody else. Is that who he's supposed to be catching? I suppose so, if it's the title of the book.
That is most of the plot of that book, yes.
That's awesome. Oh, the somebody worse. Oh, I see. Okay. All right, so it's not Bedelia. Okay, cool.
I mean, it could still be Bedelia. You never know. Not saying it's not.
I mean, I have some very dark thoughts about Bedelia that I want to talk about later.
I know. I'm so excited.
I love her. I love her so much. She is probably so far my favorite character on this show.
If Beverly had been in this show more, or if she was in this show more, not talk about her in the past tense for some reason, but if she has been in the show more, I would agree. I would say Beverly, but Bedelia's, she's just so good and just so otherworldly almost.
Exactly.
Even Jack seems when he talks to her, we'll talk about it in here in a bit, but Jack seems who is this chick? How do I have a conversation with her?
Yeah. Because she talks just like Hannibal. Wink, wink, wink.
I'm so excited to talk about this episode. I'm so excited because things are revealed, things happen.
Yes.
Will almost gets better and then doesn't. So it's one of those moments of oh no, poor Will.
Oh my god.
And also, I need to issue an apology because I think all last episode I referred to Georgia Manchin as Georgia Lass, which is her name on Dead Like Me. So sorry about that. But it's okay. Who cares?
That's possible.
Yeah, so
it's fine.
I'm sorry for those people who get offended by stuff like that. But yeah, I saw Dead Like Me.
Listen, you're getting Jack and Will fine now.
I've done
there you go.
4 episodes in a row. I think I've got it. So.
I know. I'm so proud. So this episode, relevé, I actually had never really heard this word before, like in the context of food, right? Because like relevé is a word that can mean a lot of stuff, but I had never heard it in the context of food, so I had to look it up. And relevé are actually dishes that were put down on the table, like right after a big dish of soup is taken away. And I'm going to quote from Wikipedia here, and Wikipedia is getting its information from a book written by Jean-Louis Flandrin, and the book is called A History of Table Service in France. Okay? So in the late 18th century, the practice arose of removing the empty soup tureens and replacing them with entrées de broche or other grosses entrées. The replacement dishes were commonly called relevés, or in English, removes. They were the last of the entrees consumed at the meal, although they were brought to the table immediately after the potage. Oh, and if we remember correctly, potage was the episode where Alana, Will, and Hannibal bring Abigail back to her home, and Nick and Marissa are killed. So these 2 episodes are linked even just by the title, right? Like, we know that they're very, very linked by the content, but they are linked by their title. And I would like to suggest the theme of a revelation for this episode, just because there are so many, and because it also works with the title, right? Removing a dish to uncover or reveal another one.
I really like this theme. Like we obviously, several people are going through several revelations here, and we're going to uncover more and more things about these characters as we go through the episode, specifically about Hannibal, but even Will and Abigail, and even to a certain extent, Jack. Like, I think Jack is having a revelation about kind of his interactions with Will and what Will is doing and is capable of.
He's also getting suspicious of Hannibal.
Finally.
I know.
12 episodes
Jack.
in. Jack, you were the head of the behavioral analysis unit at the FBI. You should know better. Or is Hannibal just that good? I don't know. It's hard to tell.
I think it's both, personally.
It's probably both, yes.
Yeah.
And I just really like this thing because as we go through it, I think there's going to be not just character-wise, but also plot-wise, and just the some of the concepts here. The thing that sticks out in my brain the most is towards the end of the episode when Abigail says, like, how many people have you killed, and Hannibal says, way more than your father.
I know, right?
And she just, and that moment of revelation for her is just horror, right? It's just terrifying of like, who is this person? And
because it also echoes like that moment, that earlier moment where she's like, you're just like my father, and he goes, I'm nothing like your father.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it gives such a different context to that for her. Anyway, I'm so sorry I cut you off. You were saying? No,
that was perfect. And it's, I think that these 2 episodes being like the potage episode with this episode being linked is really interesting. Because that was an episode where we did get a lot of revelations. Oh my God, I don't know why I can't.
Honestly, I was doing the same thing yesterday, so I totally get it.
So now you've infected me, is what's happening.
I know. I'm sorry. It's because relevé and revelation, like, it's kind of the same like letters, but just jumbled differently, and it's like this. It's playing a trick on my head, and I hate it.
There's a period in iOS history where your autocorrect could infect another phone. So
what?
So like if you spelled something wrong consistently and you didn't correct it and you like texted it to a person a lot, their phone would think that that's the way to spell the word. That just reminds me of like mispronouncing stuff on the podcast, of like one person doing it and then the other person picking it up, and then it just goes back and forth from there. So
I mean, that's how language is shaped, right? So
yes.
We're good.
Podcast transmitted disease is what we're doing. PTD.
Oh my God. All right.
So I guess with all of that in mind, do you want to jump into Beat by Eat?
I would love to do that.
So let's start. Will is finally in the hospital. Finally.
I know, right?
And he is walking around going to visit Georgia Mansion in Georgia's room. He's dragging his IV stand behind him. And Georgia's still in her hyperbolic chamber. She looks way better than she has in the past. And she has this absolutely, like, just this most sweetest smile that you've ever seen as she sees Will. And he says, do you look better? And she says, do I look alive? And it's just a very... Will has said several times that he collects strays, right?
Yes,
both human and canine. And this just feels like one of those moments of him just reaching out to a quote unquote stray who has kind of been abandoned by everybody. It's very sweet.
I know, right? And he does say, you look pretty.
Yes.
And I just want to keep that in mind.
They talk about Will's diagnosis. They still haven't been able to figure out what's going on with him other than just treating the fever. And Georgia says, they're just going to keep looking. They're just going to keep looking and doing tests, but they won't ever find out what's wrong. They'll just know that you're wrong. And it's kind of a pessimistic way to look at diagnosis, but obviously it's understandable from Georgia, right?
Well, there you go. Like it's been her whole experience, her whole life. And so it makes total sense that she's kind of like preparing Will for the worst, right? Like I guess that would be like one of the downsides of peer support is that sometimes like people give each other really bad advice. And that's like part of the whole experience. And this, unfortunately, for Will specifically, was bad advice, right? But it was accurate for Georgia's experience.
Georgia also says that she's going to undergo electrotherapy, shock treatment, which is just the latest in like a long line of treatments that she's been promised by doctors that would fix her, that would give her some relief and comfort. And honestly, like it just sounds barbaric. Like everything I know about electroshock therapy comes from, I don't know, like, horror movies, right? Like it's all bad. So the idea that they would do that in, I guess 2013 when this was coming out is sounds barbaric to me. Although I know it has, like, it's still in practice for some stuff. So
it is, yeah. And because again, when I was reading the papers on Cotard's syndrome, because I was so scared by it. I was like, oh my God, how do you contract it? Like, am I at risk? Can I think that I'm dead?
Oh no.
Well, again, like the way that I deal with fear is by understanding stuff. And so like now that I understand it better, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. But if I understood correctly, like, the doctors that she had seen before didn't know that she had Cotard's syndrome, right? Like, because again, I totally get that she doesn't believe that she can be treated, like just because of her experiences in the past. But Will is right when he says that people who have Cotard's syndrome can recover with electroshock therapy, because from the papers that I read, like that seems to be the standard treatment for that specific syndrome. And also the latest developments is that you can treat it entirely pharmacologically, which is actually pretty cool if you don't need to get electroshock treatment. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it's a lot of like antipsychotic and stuff like that. So it's not great either. Like
it's not a good time, but it's not electroshock therapy.
It's not a good time, but it's not electroshock therapy. So we'll take that with that. But so basically, yes, people can recover from what she has. She doesn't believe it because she hasn't, been proven that she can recover. But she could recover. And I don't know why I'm saying all of this, because none of it matters.
We only have a limited amount of time with Georgia left, unfortunately. Which is sad because I really do. I love this actor a whole lot. I would have liked to seen her on the show, even though like the role that she fulfills, I think is kind of perfect in terms of like the story structure and everything. And I think you're right. I don't believe that any of her doctors picked up on the Cotard syndrome until after she killed her friend and did all this business. She tells Will that she doesn't remember what she did and she doesn't want to. And she describes it as the remembering process as a horrible dream where I killed my friend. And Will kind of picks up on this. He's like, do you dream of killing anybody else? And she says, I dream of you killing that doctor, which is fascinating that she thinks that it was Will.
Well, there you go. This is like the second hint in as many episodes that we've watched that Will and Hannibal are like merging in some way.
They are changing one another in some way.
You changed me, Hannibal.
Yeah.
I killed because you killed.
I really.
Oh my God, I have to stop. What is wrong with me this morning?
That's okay. That's okay. I just need a bell so I can mark all these things so I can clip it into a clip show later. She says that she couldn't see Will's face. And as she's talking about this, the scene blurs out, just kind of like the CGI effect that we saw when she saw Hannibal, where his face was all blurry. And then, of course, camera finds Hannibal. We blur right back in on Hannibal, who has brought a dish for Will in the hospital, and he starts describing it. I didn't write down all of the stuff that he wrote, but it's a fancy Chinese bird that has restorative properties and these specific vegetables, and it goes through the whole thing. And Will's just like, "You made me chicken soup," and it's the sweetest thing.
And Hannibal is just like,
"Of course I did. Of course I did. Yes, it's so good,
so cute." I love this. I love this moment. And it's funny because when they sit down and they're eating this soup, it really, really looks like their first meal in the hotel room. And it's really weird to me because it's exactly the same blocking. And I'm wondering if it's not the same curtains, the same furniture. And I'm thinking, is this purely for the viewers? Just to be like, oh, remember how easy things were early on in season 1? Or if it's hinting at something about Will's state of mind. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's difficult with a show like Hannibal, who practices in some, I guess not magical realism, but plays with what reality is, especially via Will's perception. That this hospital room that he's in doesn't look like any hospital room you've ever seen. I've just never seen a table set up by a window in a hospital room that I've ever been in. And it's so much like the first episode that I have to think that it's a direct link, and that it's showing us as the viewer that it's linked in Will's mind to that first episode, to that first meal that they shared. Hannibal starts commenting on, I guess he's talked to the nurses, which is really just very Hannibal. I can just see him charming the nurses and being like, how's my friend Will Graham? What's that perfume you're wearing?
By the way, you should get this checked.
Yeah. Also, you have liver disease. Yeah. But he's like, I know you've been roaming around, visiting Georgia, and Will's like, yeah, I'm restless, basically. I just need to go around. And Will wonders out loud if all of his hallucinations weren't just a symptom of the fever. And it's interesting. We didn't talk about this in the last episode, but I was skimming the script for the last episode, and this scene or this dialogue was in that episode about Hannibal specifically saying oh, this could be signs of dementia, and then it just popped over here into this episode, which I just find kind of interesting, and also fucking horrifying. Hannibal, don't tell people they have dementia when they obviously do not have dementia. This is horrible.
When you know what they have, right? That's...
Yeah, I can't imagine. As a person who's gotten a pretty horrific diagnosis in his life at least once, I just can't imagine getting a friend telling you that and specifically lying to you about it. I know we've talked about medical gaslighting a lot. Obviously, you have very strong opinions on it. For some reason, this got me more than anything else we had seen. I don't know why. I don't know why.
I mean, because it hits in a sensitive place, right? And that's totally normal. I think it's the ultimate. It feels like a really big betrayal. And that's kind of the thing, right? Everything that Hannibal has done so far is a betrayal of Will's trust, because Will, there are implicit rules in friendship. And I know that Hannibal and Will kind of have this relationship where is he his patient? Is he his friend? And I think that he is one when it works out better for Hannibal, and he is the other when that works out better for Hannibal. So Hannibal gets to dictate the terms of everything. Mm-hmm. But there are rules to both of these relationships, and Hannibal is just violating all of those rules. And I cannot I want to see Will's reaction when he realizes that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not going to be good for anybody. I can guarantee that.
No, I'm sure.
We also, Hannibal turns the conversation at this point over to Georgia. Let me back up a step. They talk about Will's diagnosis, and Hannibal says that he's been hiding it from Jack just based on wanting to know more before he, goes to Will's boss, essentially. And then because it's Hannibal, he redirects the conversation back to Georgia, who Will says, is struggling to remember what she did, and that she doesn't even want to, but she's like struggling when she does. And Hannibal pauses and is like, I can't say that I blame her. And you're just like, uh-oh, Georgia, run.
It's so, it's again like the strays that Will is kind of like picking up. It seems like Hannibal is just like marking them for slaughter, like with Hannibal. Oh my God, with Abigail, with Georgia, like it's, I don't know. I'm scared for Will's dogs.
Like searching an archive of our own for Hannibal at this exact moment, because you know
that exists. Oh my God, yes, but that is not my cup of tea. No. That not my cup of tea at all. No. I will skip that entirely.
It's weird because it's definitely not. Like obviously there's like the age gap difference that would be a little grody, and there's like the gaslighting and the brainwashing and manipulation and all that stuff, which would make that relationship bad. But to me, it comes down to just feeling really, really incestual. Like I don't know.
I know.
Like
same.
It's not even any of that other stuff that would really like turn me off of that relationship. I'm like, no, he's her dad. That's gross.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Show, I swear to God. Later, Georgia wakes up in her hyperbaric chamber, and she finds something in her tube. It is a plain plastic comb. And she smiles, obviously not really knowing where this is coming from, but there's a small mirror in the tube, and as she looks at it, and it's so, maybe this isn't ironic, but it's so tragic that Will just told her that she looks pretty, and as soon as he did that, she like rubbed her hand through her hair, right? And now she has this comb, and she's like looks at the mirror, and you could tell she's remembering that somebody said something nice to her and referred to her as a person, as an alive person. So she begins to comb her hair, and the static electricity builds up and discharges, which creates, in this oxygen-rich environment, creates a spark, creates a fire, and the whole thing catches on fire in the most gruesome way imaginable. This is hard to watch, as the fire literally like engulfs her from toe to the top, right? Like it's a lot.
I honestly thought that it was like a nightmare or hallucination when I watched it. I was like, okay, so who's dreaming, right? I was kind of like waiting to find out who was having this dream or this vision. And then like when they took out her corpse, I was like, oh, fuck, they killed her.
She's gone.
Yeah, I honestly felt so bad for her. Like, she literally was killed just because Will said she looked pretty.
At this point, I'm like intensely concerned about Will's dogs.
Like, I'm telling you.
Surely, not even Hannibal would hurt a dog, though. Surely not.
I don't like it when you do that.
It would take somebody worse than Hannibal to hurt a dog.
Oh no, that's worse. Oh, Jeremy, I hate this so much. I will never do this to Drew ever again.
Yes, you will.
Yes, of course I will.
At least Supernatural doesn't have these. Well, I guess they do have some pretty horrible moments you can tease them with. Never mind. I'll take that back.
Right. I guess not as horrible as Hannibal, to be honest, though. Right. Like, anyway. But we've also been talking about Hannibal being coated like with red and with fire, and to see Georgia literally engulfed in fire was definitely like an image, right?
Engulfed is a word that is, I think, pretty accurate. But also, I would like to say that she was consumed by fire.
She was consumed by fire.
Yeah, because I mean, just to bring it home, right? Just to really mash those buttons. We have our intro, and then I love this scene. So, like, the cops show up, like Jack and the team show up to look at the body, and Will is just there. And this is just a really like. I feel like I can't name a single other show where this happens in, but I know that I've seen this before, where like the main cop character is like off the case or off the job or whatever, but like something happens, so like they just show up in their plain clothes, like it happens close to them, and just Will in his like hospital gown, surrounded by FBI people, is just very funny to me. But they're pulling out the body, and it's charred, almost completely unrecognizable, and they speculate like it could be a short circuit, even though the machine looks good. And then Jack even wonders, like, hey, this could be some sort of suicide. And Will reacts to that very, very aggressively. It was like, absolutely not. She wasn't suicidal. I was here and I spoke to her, and everybody in the room is like, you did what now? Excuse me? What did you do? Because that could drastically affect the case, like the murder case that they're going to try her for. But of course, now there obviously is no case, as Will points out.
Yes, exactly. Like that's kind of the thing. And I don't know, like I know that the justice system is a thing, right? Like capital T, but also like I think showing a little bit of human empathy sometimes is just like the right thing to do, no matter what the legal thing to do is.
Yeah. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
Absolutely.
Which is a thing that I'm just in the last 10 years was shocked people don't understand more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
humanity continues to impress and disappoint me as I get older.
Same.
We switch over to Freddie, who is in Abigail's room, and Freddie is laying out dossiers with each of the victims, each of Garrett Jacob Hobbs' victims' picture, like an 8x10 photo, on top of each folder. And she's saying that she wants to write this book. She wants to structure the book via these girls, like have each chapter basically be titled with the name of the victim. And they talk about the title. And Freddie says she wanted to name it The Last Victim, but there's already a book about that. Did you read anything about this when I sent you the link? It's fine if you didn't.
I literally just read like the little summary. That's
and that's really all we need to know. I looked it up, and it's just kind of fascinating that The Last Victim is a book. I guess if I'm going to do this, I should actually just click the link so I can know the names of everybody. It's a book by Jason Moss, co-authored by Jeffrey Collar, about serial killers. And specifically like these horrible, like just evil people, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Wayne Henley, Charles Manson. He interviewed all of these people and then later went on to commit suicide. And the speculation around that is because of his interactions with these people, because he started being kind of obsessed with the iconography of Satanism and things like that. But there's also a thing where It's very similar to what we're experiencing with Hannibal and Will. Is the reason. I don't mean to laugh at this because it's actually real, but it's it's such a good. It's a casual thing to put into the episode, which I don't think most people would really pick up on. That it's literally like a book where this dude like wrote about these serial killers and got so obsessed with them and almost got brainwashed by them. And I'm just like,
Yeah. I wonder what that could possibly be referring to, or who that could possibly be referring to. I get that. Especially I think with like the conversation that happens like right after this, like, because I have some thoughts that are coming up now that we're talking about it. Like, oh my God.
And yeah, Abigail says like, well, she is not her dad's last victim anyway, referring to herself. And Freddie says who was, and Abigail says Marissa, who was her friend that was killed. And Freddie's like, well, that was, Marissa and Cassie Boyle were both killed by the copycat. And Abigail says, but that's, the copycat wouldn't exist for my dad, so it was my dad's fault. And then Freddie says, well, whose fault is Nick's death? And Abigail says, I think Nick is responsible for Nick's death.
Jesus Christ. Like, Abigail, can you be a little more subtle, please? Like, and I just think like, so you know how we've been talking about like Garrett Jacob Hobbs, like getting into Will's mind, right? Like, and also that there's been like a merging a little bit of like Will and Hannibal. And I'm like, of course, then Hannibal and Garrett Jacob Hobbs are going to have some sort of interaction, right? If in this kind of like metaphysical world, right? But I'm also thinking back to Hannibal feeding mushrooms to Abigail and how she saw family when she sat down at that table, where she saw Hannibal as her dad. And so it's interesting that she would say that she blames her dad for Marissa and Cassie's death because like her new dad is responsible for their deaths, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's extremely well observed. No, that's extremely well observed. Yes, absolutely. Abigail.
What?
Abigail. There's also an angle here that, as it mentioned, because Freddie defends Nick, right? She's like, Nick wasn't a killer. He was just a dumb kid trying to figure out what happened to his sister. And she says, like, I've interviewed enough killers to know what they are. But also, Freddie, you kind of put him up to all of this. Like,
she absolutely did.
Yeah, and that I think that's something that Freddie needs to deal with on her own. Freddie describes killers as having a very specific kind of hostility in them, which is a great line, and says that she sees it in Will Graham all the time, and that she blames Will and Jack for telling people that Nick was the copycat, which led to presumably the copycat killing him, which we obviously know is not right, but also kind of is right.
Right. Well, there you go. This feels like such a weird scene to me because Abigail is also starting to realize that like it's going to be a lot harder than she thought to keep her secret from Freddie Lowndes. And it's like, girly pop, like Hannibal warned you.
Yeah, he said if you open the door, you would not know what's coming through, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He warned you, like, and you made those choices, those quote unquote bad choices for yourself. Not to say that she's responsible for what happens to her at the end. Please, I never said that.
No, of course not.
But yeah, like, of course this was going to happen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And I think this kind of ties into our theme a little bit too here, right? Where this is Abigail having the revelation that this is not going to be as simple as she may have thought it was. As Freddie says later in the episode, like she describes Abigail as being a smart girl who hasn't realized that other smart girls know all the smart girl tricks. And like she thinks she's winning here. Like she thinks she's doing something, and Freddie's like, kind of see what you're doing, kind of on top of you.
Exactly, that's the thing. Like she is too young. She hasn't acquired the sophistication that it takes to be able to really lie as well as she needs to in order to keep this a secret. Like she just doesn't have the experience to be able to handle something like that.
Thank God she's got a good teacher though, right, Mary?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like screaming begins again. Like, do you want me to put another possum in those notes?
Like, put more
do you want me to do that?
More screaming possums, please. Yes. I do want to note here that the soundtrack for this particular episode has a little bit of a different feel. Like a lot of Hannibal soundtrack is very tonal and very like kind of stretched out and drawn out. And this has a much more of like kind of a weird otherworldly like science fiction vibe to me. I don't know if you picked up on that at all, or if I'm just kind of reading into it, but it definitely felt a little different to me.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that actually, because in the whole, basically in all of the episodes, like, all of the episode, like something, the sound from the next scene starts in the current scene. And I think that this is also to kind of like sonically represent Will like losing time and Will's walls coming down in his mind.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're thinking that it plays directly into the characterization of Will and what he's going through.
I think so. Yes.
Nice. I based on what I know of the way this dude was composing music, Brian Ritzel, something like that. I'm inclined to agree with you 100%.
Very cool.
Because there's at least one track on that season 1 soundtrack which is like 43 minutes long, as if he had just literally watched the episode and like orchestrated the song around it. Which would be.
Is it this episode? Because it would make sense.
I'll have to look. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll go find out later. That evening, Will is sleeping about as well as me and you were doing right now, which is to say not very. And he wakes up and Georgia's in his room, and she's kind of got this weird, static, stuttery kind of way of moving. And as he stands up, she goes outside and he follows her, and she stands off of his porch and looks at him and says, "See." Which, people kept saying it was going to come back up again, and guess what? It did. And just then antlers penetrate Georgia from behind and lift her up, just like Cassie Boyle. And then she's set on fire. And as she's consumed by this flame, the flames start to go out from bottom to top, and they reveal the stag having killed her.
Oh my God. This is right about the moment that I DM'd you, like, Hannibal is the stag!
Yes. And my response was, finally. We can finally talk about this. It's, absolutely. He has been the vision. He's like, and if you think about the times that Will has seen the stag. It's a lot of times when Hannibal was manipulating to think one way or the other, or when he is not trusting himself, or when he, things like that. Like the stag comes up very specifically when Will starts hallucinating a lot. And that, I don't think every time really fits with that, but it works enough that like that's exactly what they were going for. That's what they were trying to tell us the entire time.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Will makes the incredibly bad decision to check himself out of the hospital. Will, please, what are you doing? We were just now getting the help. You were just feeling better, and now this has happened.
Such a train wreck.
And he goes to Jack Crawford's office to tell Jack that Georgia was murdered, that this was not a suicide, this was not a accident, this was a actual murder, and she was murdered by the same person that killed Dr. Sutcliffe. And Jack is like, dude, what? I can't go with you on this journey. This doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And to be fair to Jack, he does make some excellent points, right? Where he's like basically saying that the reason Georgia couldn't see the face of the person was because she had cut it in half. And like, yeah, right? But also like, no, right?
Yeah, but no.
Yeah, exactly. Like I what I'm trying to say is that I completely understand Jack's reaction, and I do think that like it is the right reaction to have in this moment, to doubt this like mega leap that Will is taking right now.
Yes, absolutely. But Will isn't going to insist. And I love this line of his. It says where he says, "All her adult life, the woman was misunderstood. What I can do is make sure that her death isn't misunderstood. She did not kill herself." Will's passion to protecting his quote unquote strays, to protecting these like people around him that didn't have the opportunity, right? That didn't have protection, it's so nice to see. It's very wholesome, and it's also so ironic because we desperately need somebody to do that for Will at this point. I wish Will had a Will.
Yes, I was literally going to make that to say that, because like Will is being the person that Will needs right now.
Will moves downstairs to the morgue. I call this a morgue. This has got to be like a lab or something, but whatever. There's a bunch of dead bodies in drawers, so I'm going to call it a morgue. And he's kind of in a fugue state. Like he's not hearing things clearly. Everything is kind of muffled as he moves through. And as he comes to reality, we see Z and other guy whose name I should have learned in 12 episodes, but I did not. They are talking about the comb that they found near Georgia. And Will is like, well, there's your murder weapon. And Jack's like, or it's the suicide instrument. And Will is like, gets really frustrated. He pulls out the drawer that has Sutcliffe's body, and he starts pointing out the differences in Georgia's first kill, where she killed her friend, and Sutcliffe, saying this was a copy. Someone was copying Georgia's kill when they killed Sutcliffe. And when he says that, something triggers in his brain, and he's like, oh shit, this could be the same person who copied Garrett Jacob Hobbs' first kill. Like, that could be the person that killed Cassie Boyle, that also killed Sutcliffe, that also killed Georgia. And then he realizes the copycat killer thought she saw his face. He didn't realize that she could not see faces, so he killed her to protect himself. And this is one of those, like, Will Graham leaps that is absolute, like, we know, right? We know that he's right, but everybody else around him is like, dude, what in the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, like the tech guys are not convinced in this moment. Like there's literally a reaction shot where the camera finds them, quote unquote, and they're just looking at Will like, oh, honey, like, are you sure that you should have checked yourself out at the hospital? Yes. Like it's just so funny. But I mean, again, understandable. Like I feel like I really understand how they would feel this way, because it's a huge leap.
It is. It's a very big leap, even though like as the viewer we know it's true. Like trying to find the evidence for this, and I think it's one of these moments that make it. We've talked a lot about like the cop/crime procedural part of this show is not really our bag, right? Like it's just a function of getting us more delicious Hannibal Will moments. But like this, I think really brings home how frustrating it would be to try to catch these serial killers, to try to actually hunt them down, and then once you like get enough circumstantial evidence to figure out like who it might be, to actually prove it, right? And like we saw with the totem killer, that the only reason they called him is because he let them catch him. And it just has to be one of the most demoralizing jobs in the world to try to catch these people that are progressively better and better at hiding themselves.
And now imagine doing that with some feverish guy screaming in your ear that there's a copycat somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and Will is right. And I also get it.
Yeah, the feral little feline that is Will Graham just going like, it's a copycat. And you're like, who are you? Why are you in my lab? Why do you just keep saying
what are you
weird
doing
shit?
in my house?
Yeah. Jack, of course, is obviously a little skeptical of everything and goes to see Hannibal, specifically to talk about Will and Will's state of mind / health, wondering if Will has anything more than a fever. And he's been wondering all sorts of things about Will, specifically about his relationship with Abigail, because he still thinks that Will is protecting Abigail somehow. Hannibal resists this. Hannibal, knowing what he knows, is basically trying to defuse Jack's investigation, and says, I've only ever known Will to be a man striving to be his best self. And Jack's response to this is, you haven't known him that long, which is, ouch. You're my friend.
I know, right?
yeah, lay off. And I love the way this scene plays out, because Hannibal, it's one of those Misha Collins playing Castiel, playing Misha Collins, playing Castiel moments, where Hannibal knows so much and is pretending to be concerned, but also pretending not to know, and all of this other stuff. And it's really intense. But he says, Will needs our support, especially if this is mental illness. And of course, Jack is like, could it be mental illness, or could it be, that he's so far removed from the standard that we just think it's mental illness? And Hannibal responds to this with, sometimes Will doesn't even know his own thinking.
Honestly, like, I found this scene really hard to watch. Like, even just talking about it, I'm just like wanting to jump out of my skin kind of thing. Like, because Hannibal is just such a truly terrible person. Like, it just feels like his plan or like his game is sort of coming to an end, and he knows it, right? Like, and like, he had his fun, and now he's got to get to the ending, like the grand finale, quite literally, that's coming up in the next episode. And we'll talk later about what I think this might be, right? But
excited to hear this. Yes.
Yeah, like that's the thing. He has to like now, like he's had his fun with Will, with Abigail, and now he has to like make sure that he survives this, both like literally survive, but also like that he can maintain his lifestyle, right? And that means certain things.
Absolutely. I also want to point out here, I think I have a note about this later, but I'll go ahead and talk about it here. It's really infuriating to see Jack be like, oh, could it be mental illness? And I'm like, dude, this guy he's just been like a sweaty stain in your car for the last 4 trips to the crime scene. Like, my dude, like, if you don't, like, I mean, just send him to the infirmary, or like just have any, like, where is Beverly? Like, she would see that this man needs help.
I just don't understand how he was in the hospital and he was like, oh yeah, I've been having like headaches and hallucinations, and I have this fever, and I collapsed, and like, how did they not give him an MRI?
Yeah, right.
Like, I feel like so much of this show is also like a condemnation of the medical system as a whole.
Yes, 100%. What do you? Well, I guess I was going to say, what are you doing up here in Canada? But the show is filmed in Canada, but this is actually Baltimore,
filmed in Toronto,
which makes it a lot more sense. It's been, it's in the U.S. medical system.
Maybe it's just like the medical profession that it's kind of like commenting on, because you have Hannibal, who is, I was going to say Will, you've got Hannibal, who is a psychiatrist, right, who is literally like jumbling people's brains, and then same with Chilton, and then we're not too sure about Bedelia, and then he used to be a surgeon, and then Dr. Gideon is also a surgeon who killed people. I really feel like there's a commentary to be put together about that.
Well, and also Dr. Sutcliffe, right, the one that like Hannibal enlisted to hide this. And I don't think the show deals with this. I don't even think it has to, right? Like, I don't really think it matters.
No, it doesn't have to.
But I'm curious if, like, there was a conversation of, like, oh, yeah, he went to the hospital and they told him all of this stuff, and you would normally get an MRI, but they looked in the system and saw a clean MRI because it had been, like, hidden by Sutcliffe. So, like, oh, no, he had an MRI 2 weeks ago and it was fine. So we're not going to give him another one. And again, like, I don't really care about those kind of details, but I wonder if the writing staff like got into that.
Yeah, I wonder if they thought about it too. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing actually as I was watching. I was like, did they just see the clean MRI? Like, I don't know. Like, just give him another one.
We're going to change scenes here, and this is the third or fourth time in this episode where the sound from the next scene is present in the scene before it. So in this case, as Hannibal and Jack are looking at one another, we hear a knock on the door, and as the scene changes, Bedelia opens her door. And I really like this from a narrative perspective, because it almost like makes us feel like we're Will, kind of, where things are just stretchy at this moment. Like, we don't really know how much time is passing, and like we don't know how often, like how quick in succession are these things happen. Is this months over years or whatever? We don't know.
Yeah, we would have no idea, and I love that. I completely agree with you.
Oh, of course you do, because you wrote it in your notes. I didn't read that. I'm so sorry.
No, we just we just talked about it, right? It's fine.
It's fine. Totally fine. So yeah, Jack shows up at the door of Bedelia, which is a combination I was not expecting to happen in this episode, or in any episode. Right? Bedelia invites him in and immediately asks, like, hey, do you have a court order? And Jack is like, hey, I'm trying to find out stuff without needing one. And it's so reminiscent of what he had Miriam Lass do that I'm just like screaming.
It's a pattern.
Exactly.
Like, he did the same thing with Miriam Lass. He did the same thing with the kid in the cop car. Yep. Like, he did, like, this is what Jack does. This is who Jack is.
Absolutely. And he knows. I think he's walking the line here, because he knows he wouldn't have to use this conversation as evidence, right? He's just going to use this conversation to get the evidence that he wants to prosecute somebody. And that's such a shitty line as a cop to walk, I think. And I get like, also maybe you have to do that in these kind of cases where like it's really difficult to come up with just like actual evidence for stuff, but also it's real shitty that you're playing it wrong. Like, we have laws for this for a reason, Jack.
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
And Jack says he suspects that Hannibal is withholding information about a murder investigation. And he specifically says, I don't think Hannibal Lecter is dangerous, which is it's so funny.
I know, so cute, right?
Oh, it's so good. But he is concerned about his relationship with Will Graham.
And like, Jack, please, we are all concerned about his relationship with Will. Like, welcome to the fucking club.
100%. And as they walk into Bedelia's kitchen, we see in like one of her walls is like a herb wall. It's so very like strikingly similar to the one in Hannibal's house that I'm just like, who are you two? Do you guys know each other? Like, what is your relationship? What is your relationship?
I'm not even going to lie. I was looking for a stainless steel countertop in her kitchen. Like, I was like, girl, you eat people, don't you? Right? Like, she's, and so I couldn't see it. Like, her countertop seemed to be like some sort of stone, right? Like everywhere. However, she is wearing red. And so she is right there, like showing a visual association with Hannibal. Whether it's consensual or coerced, I suppose we'll find out eventually. I'm not too clear on that yet.
You know, we haven't talked about the costuming on the show very specifically, outside of like Hannibal just looking great all of the time. But as somebody who has like a passing interest in fashion, and not a lot of working knowledge of it, but just like an interest, the women on the show are dressed so amazingly. Like Freddie, Alana, Bedelia, all rocking extremely cool outfits all the time. Even Beverly, like when she's not in the in the lab coat, like has this cool like leather jacket kind of vibe to her, like she is Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But
that's true. Yeah.
And also like the men on the show do as well, like very specifically dressing Will the way that they do. I think we even talked about that at one point. Obviously Hannibal, but even Jack in his like standard FBI suit, right? Like you can kind of see him buying 3 of these at one time because he just wants them in the house.
Just for I think that Jack is like a very practical dresser in the way that he's like, okay, I want like that kind of like capsule wardrobe where I can just pick out any pieces and they will all go together kind of thing.
Yes.
Right? Like, whereas like Hannibal is like the opposite of that. He's just like, no, I must have everything in my walk-in closet.
Yes, absolutely. Hannibal's definitely like looking for vintage Japanese clothing with no logos, right? Like that's his vibe.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I'm thinking about the menswear guy right now, obviously, like on Twitter.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, like Hannibal is definitely dressing in a very specific way. And then you've got Will, who is contrasting with that. And he's wearing like workwear, right? With the heavy sweaters, with the utility jackets. Like, and it's just like, I didn't know much about men's fashion until I started following the menswear guy. And now I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. Talking about silhouettes and everything. And I'm like,
I know.
Yeah, definitely expand your
Let
horizon.
me look at Hannibal's silhouette.
Chris and I, because I follow a couple of like fashion like threads, because I've been trying to up my fashion game over the last few years. So I've been trying to like find, nice, durable, even if it's expensive pieces that will last a long time, that look great in multiple situations, et cetera, et cetera. And then so many of the recommendations you go to, and it's like, oh, here's a long sleeve flannel shirt for $275. And I'm just like it's a nice flannel shirt. Like I can see that, but like also $275 American dollars. Like, are you for real? Yeah. Fashion is crazy. So,
but again, I think it's one of those things where like, do you want to give off, because the thing is flannel is workwear, right? So like, do you want to give off the look of wearing workwear, or do you want to purchase workwear and then wear it for fashion purposes?
Yes, exactly.
Right. Because like you, in your line of work, right? And also like in your home with the horses, with this, with that, like you need work clothes, right? And so like, I think that there would be like an easy way of using that the same way that Will does, right? To kind of like look like you're wearing purposeful workwear, right?
Yeah, I should send you a picture of me with the horse this morning where I'm literally wearing my Hannibal clock shirt. And feeding the horses. But yes, you're right. I need workwear. I should not be wearing this shirt into the barn. But yes, absolutely. I just took a selfie for Autumn, but I might send it to you and be like, workwear.
Hannibal and a horse. I feel like you're talking about like our episode about like where we talked about like my horse.
Your horse situation.
My
yes.
horse. Yeah, my horse situation.
Just wait till season 2. Since Bedelia refuses to talk about Hannibal, Jack is like, oh, well, let's bring up your situation. Like I researched you and found out that there's a patient who attacked you. And not only was he a former patient of Hannibal's, but Hannibal referred him directly to you.
I sent this to you also as a DM, but like the last episode, I was literally about to say something like, oh my God, imagine if Hannibal orchestrated the attack on Bedelia. But I didn't because and I've been thinking about why I didn't. And I'm like, well, of course, because this was like a 2.5-hour podcast, but also because I think that I didn't really want to admit to myself that he was capable of it. Like, I was just like, I've been so naive throughout this entire show.
It's so funny. We also learned that the reason she survived the attack is because the attacker swallowed his tongue while attacking her, which sounds pretty gross.
Right. And it's like, we know that that's not completely true, right? Because in a past episode, Hannibal asks her if she took responsibility for her life during her attack, and she says yes. And I remember like talking about this with you, and obviously you knew that there was something more to this, but I was like, there's something more to this. Right? So like we know that she's not telling him the truth, and she does acknowledge that later on, or she's not telling him the full truth or the full extent of the revelation is incomplete, basically is what I'm saying.
Yes.
And this is also when Jack says, well, thank God for small favors. And Bedelia almost chokes on her fucking wine and replies, yes, thank God. And she touches her hair. And I'm just like, okay, well, we know what your tell is now.
Yeah, this is... I can't wait to find out more about Bedelia. What is this girl's deal? Let's get into it. Jack says that he feels... compelled to tell her about the 2 deaths in Hannibal's office. This is obviously Franklin and Leonard. What was violent string guys? Doesn't matter. Dead violent guy. he feels compelled to tell her about the 2 deaths that happened in Hannibal's office. And she recognizes what he's doing here. He's like, that's not bad psychology, Agent Crawford. If it was Agent Carter, much different show.
Imagine.
Much different show.
Yes.
And he talks about Hannibal's, complicated relationships with his patients. And Bedelia has a line here where she says, complicated patients are conducive to complicated relationships. And I feel like every therapist needs that like tattooed on the back of their hand or something. Like it just feels like such a good therapy line.
I mean, at the same time, like it's like she's like, oh, complicated patients are conducive to complicated relationships, right? Like she's again like doing her whole like Hannibal double speak kind of thing, and I'm just like the one you have with Hannibal, Bedelia. Tell me more about that relationship.
Yeah, let's get into it.
I am so suspicious of Bedelia.
imagine being Jack Crawford and going to like a judge to try to get a court order and just being like, look at her. There's something going on. And the judge going like, I feel you, fam. We got this. Let's get the court order signed.
It's like, I feel you, but I can't grant you a court order on the basis of look at her, fam.
Just look at her.
We're unhinged.
Yeah, this is crazy Wednesday energy. Jack finally just asks directly, like, how far do you think that Hannibal would go in treating a patient? How far do you think he would go in treating Will Graham? And Bedelia finally gives up a little bit of information, saying that Hannibal views Will as more of a friend than a patient, and that would make him loyal, and that Hannibal would want to help him. And Jack responds like, well, I consider Will a friend, and I want to help him too. And this line and this line delivery and everything about this, Bedelia looks at him and says, seems to me that Will Graham would do well to have more friends like Dr. Lecter. And I posited the last episode that maybe she was in a way trying to protect Will by talking past the veil, talking past the human suit that Hannibal wears. But this just seems like she wants him to die. I don't know how else to explain it.
I mean, on it. So again, like we're going to talk about this a little bit later when Hannibal and Bedelia actually talk, because I have some thoughts about that. But I like the way that Gillian Anderson delivers this line, right? Because like she pauses, right? Because like Jack says, I consider him a friend and I want to help him too. And then she goes, seems to me that Will Graham would do well to have more friends. Like, and then she pauses because you think that she's going to say like you, right? Because she knows how terrible Hannibal is, and she goes like Dr. Lecter, and you're like, oh, well, look at you. Look at you. Huh? What is going on here? So clearly, like, I think maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But like, I'm thinking that maybe she's aware of what Hannibal is trying to do to Will to like kind of make him become who he is, quote unquote, as a killer. And she is encouraging that. Right?
And it makes you wonder if Hannibal referred the patient that attacked her to her.
Yes.
If there were any similarities in the way that he treated that patient that she saw, right? That she's now seeing again with this relationship with Will.
Yes.
But of course, that's just theory. Who knows? Who could possibly know the answer to those questions?
Well, it's literally in my notes later. So I agree with you. Like, I think that's what's going on.
We go back to the morgue. And Jack decides he's going to play Jeopardy with both Z and the other guy, whose name I promise I will look up one day, listeners. I'm so sorry that this the twins.
I love them. Yeah,
I like the idea of playing Jeopardy. In other words, the answer is the copycat killer killed not only Cassie Boyle but also Sutcliffe and Georgia Manchin. What are the questions we have to ask to get to that answer? And I love these two guys are specifically Z. Z has expressed several times, like he's been the only one of our group that's been kind of antagonistic towards Will in any way, kind of questioning Will's jumps and logic. And of course, there was that great scene where Will just closes the door in his face. And here he has a line about finally we're going to get back to like the old school investigation techniques. And it just we talked about this in the DMs, but like it just makes me think like, as this technician having, again, the feral feline that is Will Graham to come in and just like, I think that it's X, Y, and Z, and be proven right time and time again has to be so fucking frustrating when you're like a forensic guy. I
would quit. Like, I would just quit. Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? No. It's like, it's the same thing as like, imagine working with Mulder. I would quit. Like, I would just not be able to deal with a personality like that.
Yes. And when they start kind of goofing around talking about like, well, this isn't a theory, it's more of a hypothesis and things like that, Jack just looks around and is like, where's Beverly? I need Beverly. And I'm like, same, dude, same. We absolutely needed him.
But this was also such like needed levity, right? Because I think that if Beverly had been there, it wouldn't have been like, it would have been more serious, like more focused and just overall more professional, which is great. But also like, I think this episode needed this little bit of levity. And so I'll take that.
And Jack decides he's going to dig in on this. So even though, and I like this for a couple of different reasons, but the main one being that despite his doubts of Will and Will's protection of Abigail, he doesn't doubt Will's ability. So he keeps coming back to this theory because Will made this leap. So he kind of wants to prove it, or at least at the very least disprove it. So he tells his team like, hey, we're going to go to every outhouse, hen house, chicken out. Like, he doesn't do the actual speech for The Fugitive, but he does say like, we're going to pull phone records, we're going to pull train tickets, we're going to pull everything we know about Garrett Jacob Hobbs to see if we can identify who the serial killer would be, or the copycat killer could be, because he has to be somebody that knew Garrett Jacob Hobbs. And the fact that they are going to use this to find out something completely different is going to suck ass, but also like at least he's rolling with it, right? At least he's listening to Will in a way.
Well, so so Jack, again, driven by his need to close cases and to be successful at his job, realizes that Will has been right in the past, and therefore he's like, okay, well, let's just follow this and see what we can get to. The thing is, like, I just don't understand how this was not done before. Like, how did they not investigate this entirely to close the case properly? Like, did Will just kill Garrett Jacob Hobbs and then they were like, okay, done, case closed? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this should have been looked at, right? Like, to prove that this happened, that like Will didn't just kill an innocent man, because like it could have been that too, right? Like, I'm astounded sometimes by the stuff that happens on this show, like
and like they like
the lack of professionalism.
And I think they did. I feel like what's happened is they did just enough to close the case, right? So after Garrett Jacob Hobbs dies, like we obviously like they took Abigail back to the scene of the crime. They found the weird antler trophy room. They figured out that he was using like bits and pieces of his victims and pillows and pipe glue and all this other stuff. So at a certain point they were like, okay, this is enough evidence for us to be able to close this case. We don't have to look in it any deeper. And it was really only Jack saying like, but what if Abigail was involved? So he was the only one kind of with that niggling thought. But like, why wouldn't he just go through the process? Yeah, exactly.
But there you go. Like, imagine the families of the victims who are just told like this happened. Like, I would be like, okay, but how did he meet her? Like, how are you sure? Like, I would want to know so much more to be able to like try to make some sense out of this horrible tragedy, this horrible murder, right, that happened to somebody I know. And I'm just like, anyway, I know that it's for the story, so I need to let it go, but like, this should have been done before, Jack.
Yes,
is what I'm saying. There you go.
Jack, be better at your job.
Don't just rely on feral feline Will Graham, right?
We're going to switch over to Abigail and Will, and what might be like one of the saddest moments of the show, I think, or one of the saddest conversations. She starts out by saying, "You told me that killing someone was the ugliest thing in the world," and he says, "One of them." And I think it's important to remember this is, I think, their first conversation since he realized that she killed Nick. Right, like they haven't actually spoken in person directly about this.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, like, she thinks that Will knows about her involvement with, like, her dad, right?
Yes.
because Hannibal told her that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a lot about like the sounds and the music, the scoring in this episode, and like I think I said last episode something about how like the only thing that doesn't lie to you on this show is the music, and like I was so relieved to hear like some very sweet sounding music for the scene. Like I was just like, oh my god, this is so nice. Like okay, I can rely on that. And then literally it changed back to like this weird dissonant stuff that we usually get to warn us of danger. And I was just like, oh no, no.
And this conversation they're about to have reminds me quite a bit of the conversation that Hannibal and Jack had. You see, you cursed me.
Oh, no.
You cursed me.
I'm sorry.
That Hannibal and Will had
did.
in, I think, the second episode even, maybe the third episode, where they were discussing how Will felt after killing Garrett Jacob Hobbs. And Abigail says, I didn't feel ugly when I killed Nick Boyle. I felt good. And that's why it was so easy to lie about it. And Will says, like, you felt like you didn't do anything wrong. And then she asks how it felt to kill her father. And he says, I felt terrified, and then I felt powerful. And she responds with, you felt good. And yes, listeners, I am literally just writing the dialogue of the show into my notes at this point, because I don't know what else to even do with this scene. So
it's because there's so much going on there, right? Like, because again, like I said, Hannibal, I have to stop with that. Abigail, I have to stop. Abigail is much younger and much more impressionable than Will is, right? So it makes sense that like her first kill would make such an impression on her, where she's like, and she's also simplifying a lot of emotions, right? Terrified and then powerful doesn't necessarily mean good, but in her mind it does, right? So like we're seeing, I think, like the different effects of Hannibal's manipulation on different people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And she says something about like getting away from her father, and Will just has this incredibly heartbreaking line of, I don't feel like either of us have gotten away from your father. And Abigail says that it should have been her to kill her, for killing her mom, for killing those girls, and for making her, and she stops. And because she doesn't necessarily want to say this out loud. And Will doesn't pick up on this because he is so consumed by his own dark thoughts. He's got all of this darkness inside of him. He doesn't know what to do with it.
He's going to go dark side at some point.
And Will doesn't pick up on it, so he brings up the copycat and says that he can catch him, but he's going to need Abigail's help. And he reaches out and holds her hand as he says this and like looks her in the eye. And Will, up to this point, has felt, since he checked himself out of the hospital, he's felt more stable than we have seen him previously before he went to the hospital. And it's here that I think we start seeing like, oh, that foundation that we keep talking about is crumbling a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like it just, I mean, again, like if all they did was take care of the fever, right? And the fever is what exacerbates the visions and the everything, then like you're just treating a symptom, right? Like the second he's going to be out, and the antibiotics are going to leave his body, well, then there you go. Like you've got somebody who is severely ill, who is making all these decisions. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, you mentioned, I think you talk about in your notes about how it feels kind of creepy that he's like holding her hand. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it feels ominous to me, right? Again, like the music is ominous. The hand holding is ominous. I think this scene is meant to make us feel off and to be like, this is a really bad idea. Don't do it.
Yes, absolutely. Is it at this point that you started regretting starting this podcast with me? At this point, you're like, why? Why did I agree to do this? This was not the way I wanted to spend my 2024. Like, it's not the good way to spend New Year's Eve, which I guess we're releasing this podcast on.
I think at this point, I just like, because I remember when I first watched this episode, at one point I put my hands like on my face, like, oh my God. And I did not move for the rest of the episode. I just couldn't, like, I couldn't process what was happening on the screen. I was like, no. And I think it started in that moment. You're right.
From here, we go to Bedelia, who is meeting with Hannibal. I find so I talked about this with the herbs in her kitchen, but this like sitting room that they're in is so reminiscent of Hannibal's office. Not even like the same style, but just like the same attention to detail, right? Like the same and the same. It almost feels like the same style, but from two different lenses, almost from like a masculine and a feminine lens. Because she's obviously her place is like much more flowy with these huge, like kind of translucent curtains on the windows and like the softer chairs and things like that. But man, it's with the chairs facing each other and everything. It's so reminiscent. Like you're really just like dying to know what is happening with these two people. And she tells him that Jack came to see her about him. About him protecting Will specifically, and he's surprised by this, and probably more than a little concerned. And if I was Jack Crawford, I would feel like a goose just walked over my grave, because
I know
this is definitely a way to get murdered and chopped up into bits. And he says,
Literally.
"Are you asking me as my psychiatrist?" And she says, "I'm asking you as a colleague, and as your colleague, I want to tell you to stop whatever you're doing with Will."
Okay, the as a colleague thing, because she said very clearly, like at one point, that they were not colleagues, right? Like they're not psychiatry colleagues, kind of thing. Is she saying that they're like serial killer colleagues? Like I just so badly, I think I just so badly want her to also be a serial killer.
Yes.
Like, and I'm so sorry if I'm offending anybody. Like I'm not bad mouthing her. Like I think that she would be such an interesting character if she also was a serial killer. Like I love her so much.
How much of this is just us wanting Gillian Anderson to stab us? Like, what is, you know what I'm saying? Like, could it be, maybe it's not Bedelia, is what I'm saying. Like, maybe, I'm not saying I want her to step on me. I'm just saying that, like, I know people do. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think I will not answer this question.
Okay. Plead the fifth, why don't you?
We don't have the fifth where I am, but yes, I do plead the fifth.
Don't need to testify as evidence against yourself.
Yep, there you go.
She accuses him of crossing professional lines, and he responds with, by making a friend. And again, just like the Bedelia lines are going fucking crazy this episode. She says that you cannot function as an agent of friendship for a man that's disconnected from the concept as a man who is disconnected from the concept.
She fucking knows.
She has to, right? She has to. Like, why is she still seeing this dude? Like, if I knew anything about like Hannibal's, what is behind the veil that he is hiding, I would just run away. I would move to fucking Hawaii or something. Like, I would have to leave the country. I would have to go far, far away.
Well, so there you go. That's why I'm saying, like, she's either like associating with him by choice, right, consensually, or it's coerced, or he has obviously, like, he is holding something over her. I think they're just colleagues, right? Like, that's what I think. But I think that there's also the possibility that, like, he is holding something over her that, you know, he has assumed her protection, quote unquote. And she's like, well, I don't have a choice at this point. It's either that or I get chopped to pieces.
Yes. Maybe
Literally.
so. Maybe so. Yeah. Maybe this is all like blackmail. Hannibal insists that he's helping Will. And Bedelia points out that he may not even be able to help.
And so, okay. So Hannibal says that he's trying to help Will understand who he is, right? Which I think we know at this point that Hannibal like sees a killer in Will and wants him to become a killer, to like embrace that side of him. And if that's the thing, right? Like if we assume that Bedelia knows what Hannibal is, and she's telling him that he might not be able to make Will see who he is, then maybe she's trying to tell Hannibal to back off before Jack puts it together.
I love this line from Hannibal where he says that he is does not want to tell Will that he is his best basically isn't good enough. And Bedelia responds and she just says, so say something else. Like say anything else, right?
She's like, save yourself at this point. Like this is like self-preservation is needed here.
And she brings up that Jack brought up, asked her about her attacker. And you could see Hannibal's instant reaction, her absolute instant reaction of like, what did you say? And she basically says like, oh, I just, told him half truths, and it's, I don't know that I could face down this look from Hannibal, to be honest with you. I'd just melt. I'd be like, I need to just go into the core of the earth now. I'll see you later.
Well, so he's like fiddling with the couch, right? Like the same way that he was kind of fiddling with the scalpel like a few episodes ago when he thought that he had been found out. Like he was totally wondering if he was going to have to kill her in this moment, like 100%. Like he was like, so what did you tell him? And he's like fiddling right with the couch when he had like his hands in his pocket before. Like, whoa, so scary.
So she told Jack, and she tells Hannibal what she told Jack, was that, you know, her attacker swallowed his tongue, but she didn't tell him how or why he swallowed the tongue, or who else was there, or maybe who else was there.
So I think that what she says is who was responsible.
Yes,
which is even worse.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to which Hannibal replies, "You protect your patient from Jack Crawford, but I can't protect mine."
Oof.
So by not saying who was responsible, she is protecting her only patient,
Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Dr. Hannibal Lecter. I like literally put like a meme of the possum like screaming begins again, because I'm just like, what?
It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. There's a whole other episode of this that we have to get through.
Really? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, next episode, are we going to see more Bedelia?
She's a character in the show. She has a lot of she's in a lot of episodes.
Yes. That's so exciting.
She's in more episodes of Hannibal than DJ Qualls is in Supernatural. So.
Oh really? Okay. Cool,
which is not a lot. I mean, he's only in like 6 episodes. It's weird. She insists that he tries to maintain some sort of boundary between himself and Will Graham. And Hannibal responds, when the pressures of my relationship with Will Graham grow too great, I promise you I will find a way to relieve them, which is maybe the most terrifying, like in a sea of terrifying things that Hannibal has said in this episode and the preceding episodes. Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
It's a warning. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying that, like, okay, well, like the game is coming to an end now. Like the pressure is like at its maximum. He's going to have to self-preserve. I think Hannibal is just kind of pushing that moment further and further. And Bedelia is like, well, this has gone too far. Like, you have played with your plaything a little bit too much.
Yes.
You need to end it, essentially, is what she's saying. And I also do love that, like, our theme from last week is showing up in this episode, because we're like 3 for 3 at this point.
We're doing pretty good.
I know.
After he says this, Hannibal sits down in one of the chairs, and it's this moment of where he's like, okay, now we can start therapy. And I'm like, what the fuck have you guys been doing before this? I know we started this conversation with her saying, I'm speaking to you as your colleague and not as your therapist or your psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. But just this casual, like, this section of the conversation is over, I'm going to sit down and we're going to start something new is just very Hannibal. It's just very intimidating.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to realize, is that he does this a lot this season, right? Where he changes the topic like abruptly, and then he's like, okay, now I cosplay a normal human again.
Yes.
Right? And like I feel like that happens a lot more than I picked up on. And I understand now also why you've been internally screaming this whole time.
I do a lot of internal screaming on this podcast. Sometimes it manifests in audible sighs, but inside they're screams, I promise you. We cut to Hannibal's office, where Will is there, saying that he feels he's better and clearer than before, and that he says he's finally thinking clearly about the copycat, and he's linking these murders. And Hannibal points out, like, all of these murders have suspects, and he says, well, I'm going to throw all of that out, and I'm going to focus on this theory. And Hannibal says, do you think that the copycat was trying to frame Georgia for these crimes, for killing Sutcliffe? And Will has another moment of clarity, another leap that he does, which at this point has to frighten Hannibal a little bit, because he's so right. He says he wasn't planning on framing her, he was planning on framing me. And that's fucking terrifying.
I can't take this anymore. This is too hard.
And Will begins to speculate that, it would have to be somebody in the FBI. It would have to be somebody who has access to the evidence. It would have to be somebody that's close to the cases, that knows what's going on, that knows what we're theorizing. And I'm just like, please stop talking. Please stop talking. Please,
I know, right?
Please tell anybody else this.
Fiddling. He's fiddling again, which is so fucking scary, right? Like, and I he's like, I think I might need to relieve some pressure. There's only one bed in the psychiatrist's office.
Oh no! Common theme of this podcast. There's only one bed in the X.
There's only one bed.
Yes. I love that Hannibal turns this around, because as Will is describing this theoretical person, Hannibal says, "Someone like you." And Will kind of ignores this. He just kind of lets it slide past him, and he says that he's going to reconstruct the killer's thinking, and he's going to start by bringing Abigail back to Minnesota to look at these original crimes. And of course, Hannibal is panicking a little bit, because he's realizing what Abigail and Will alone in a room together does not benefit Hannibal at this point. So he tells Will that he's being paranoid. And Will is like, nope, I'm awake. This is all real. And he just like walks out of the office, and Hannibal, there's this scene where Hannibal is just like, and I think we've all had this moment as human beings before, where we just like, something happens and we can't do anything about it. So we just sit still and we close our eyes and we take a breath and we just let it out. And he does that. And seeing Hannibal do that is basically like seeing him, like, I don't know, throw a glass across the room when he's angry or something. Like, it's just, it's just like, how frustrated and full of rage he is. And also at the same time, like, probably being like, with the way that he idolizes Will's empathic abilities, he has to like kind of be proud here, but also scared because those abilities are being turned to him. So he's starting to see Will. He realizes Will is starting to see through the construct that he has created around Will. Just so fucking good, man. This show is so good.
Well, so Hannibal being like attracted to what's extraordinary, it would definitely be attracted to like what Will is doing right now, right? Like, because that is pretty freaking extraordinary to put those things together. And so I think that's like that admiration, like that you're talking about, that pride. Because I was like, I don't know that I would have gone for proud, but I definitely see like the admiration that he has for him, right? And I also kind of saw it as like him being like, all right, I guess I'm just going to have to go take care of this. I didn't want to have to do this, but here we are. Like, it feels very like, oh, you're good. You're just like almost parental in a way. Like, oh, you're just going to do what you want, and then I'm going to have to go and pick up the pieces kind of thing, which is kind of awkward, but also like, that's just like, I don't know what other kind of relationship would give you that feeling.
Yes. Yeah. Hannibal is a master creating relationships that don't exist. That we just don't have any kind of previous experience with whatsoever. We're going to go back to the FBI, where, having now done some crime stuff, they have found evidence that Garrett Jacob Hobbs had an accomplice. For instance, multiple train tickets on the same train that some of the victims took. There's also multiple hotel rooms. And then they put together that all of these girls were abducted from schools that Abigail toured with him. And so now Jack makes this jump of thinking that Abigail is the copycat killer. And they bring up like, well, why would she kill Sutcliffe? And Jack says, because she has a taste for it now, or she wants to impress someone new. And man, like, it's so interesting to me that Will is so good at these jumps and Jack is almost good at these jumps. Like, he's, as much as we make fun of him for not working this case or whatever when he should have, at the same time, like, he's jumping to these things, he's seeing the evidence, and he's making these conclusions that are almost right.
Yeah, he's always like so close and so far at the same time. And I think that also shows that I think it shows his lack of empathy, right? Like, he doesn't understand people, or he doesn't try to understand people the way that Will does. And I think that's why his jumps like are always a little off.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or a lot off. Right. Because he's not wrong, but he's also very much not right.
Yes,
which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because like, yes, the copycat wants to impress someone new, but no, it's not Abigail.
And again, just a fascinating insight to the investigative process, which I know this is not I mean, this is all loosely based on a fictionalized books that is loosely based on a real book about profiling serial killers. But at the same time, like how you can take evidence and you can make these jumps and be incorrect, but also like close at the same time. Which I'm sure happens so often in investigations. We're gonna go from here to Jack showing up at Abigail's place. And then instead of finding Abigail, he finds Freddie. Freddie has no fear of Jack whatsoever at this point. It's just like, you look like you're here to arrest someone. We find out that Will Graham has snuck Abigail out, which she points out is unusual because he's listed as a guardian. Like, he could have just checked her out. Jack asks, how is the book going? And she says there's plot holes. And then she begins to talk about Abigail hiding something. And then specifically asks, like, what is Will Graham trying to hide? And this whole exchange is very good. Like, I think it's just confirmation for Jack to realize, like, something is going on and he can't quite figure out what it is yet. But something isn't right with Abigail and Will. Like, something is happening there. And of course, he takes this information and rudely barges into Hannibal's office, demanding to know what's going on with Will and Abigail. Hannibal says that Will has been having unusual and irrational thoughts, but hasn't acted on them, and at least that Will is aware of. And he begins to describe to Jack how Will has been losing time, waking up from crime scenes from a dissociative state. And Jack is like, oh, I've never seen this before at all. I have no idea what you're talking about. He's always been fine at crime scenes. And I'm like, he was melting into a puddle in your car when you guys were going to the observatory. Like, what are you...
He contaminated a crime scene just 2 weeks ago, right? Like, he was covered in blood. You guys had to talk about this, right? Like, he said that he was broken. Like, Jack Crawford, for fuck's sakes. Like, I just...
And he has the audacity to get mad here and is like, why didn't you tell me, to Hannibal? And Hannibal's like, well, I was doing the work. I was trying to figure this out before just assuming that the man is completely insane, like, before assuming anything about his sanity. And you have a note here about being mad about siding with Hannibal, and same. It's so annoying.
I'm so angry here. I'm so angry that the show is actually making me side with Hannibal, like, because I'm just so mad at Jack for, like, ostriching about this, right? Like, he's just like, no, if I don't see it, it's not happening, even though I'm openly talking about it with Will. Unless somebody else talks to me about it, then I'm not gonna believe it. And I'm just like, like, Hannibal's arguments here, I think, are very sound, right? Like, even if I know that Hannibal is full on lying his ass off, like, I don't even care at this point. I'm like, I'm sweating. I'm very angry.
Sweaty as it will on the podcast. Jack tells Hannibal that Will took Abigail. And asks if he knows where they could have possibly gone, and that they have evidence that Abigail helped her father in some way. And again, this is another moment where Hannibal in front of Jack is doing a masterful job of pretending to know stuff that he doesn't, pretending to be disturbed by it. Like, he's like, oh my God. And he brings Jack over and he plays Jack an excerpt of a tape that he made. And I have to presume that Will did not know he was recording these sessions, but he plays Jack a recording of one of their sessions where Will says that he feels guilty for killing Marissa Shore. I wrote Melissa several times in this podcast, in my notes. I don't know why. He feels guilty about killing Marissa Shore, like almost like he did it. And it's an excerpt, and we know that whole conversation is him worried about himself identifying with Garrett Jacob Hobbs. Like, there's context to that, but out of context, it just sounds like he's fucking confessing. Yeah. And Jack starts putting the pieces together, like, oh, Will was there when Marissa was killed. Hannibal says, well, I went to his hotel that night, but he didn't answer the door. I just assumed he was asleep. Will was there when Sutcliffe was killed. He was in the hospital. Will was there when Georgia was killed. He said that he went to visit her at one point. Jack is starting now to see that Will could be the copycat killer.
And honestly, like, when this was happening, I was like, again, I was really upset that the show was making me feel this way. But I was like, Hannibal is a murder artist. You know, like, he painted this tableau with, like, such mastery. Like, I'm impressed. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
Like, I'm so mad.
And it's all like conjecture, right? Or what do they call, or circumstantial, right? Like it's all circumstantial evidence. So, but it's still like, you know, this is Jack's wheelhouse, where he's like, oh, we've got a theory, we've got some working, some circumstantial evidence. Now let's go find some evidence. And Hannibal says, you know, Will has felt like he's been becoming Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and Jack looks distressed when he says, and now he has Hobbs's daughter. And Hannibal, this fucking masterclass and being upset, this acting that he is doing, he looks down and he just says, I'm so sorry, Jack. Like, he genuinely looks distressed. And then Jack leaves, and the moment that the door closes, he like cocks his head sideways as if he's like looking at this entire situation like a bird looks at like a bug or something. You know what I'm saying? Like he's like his whole persona changes, and he's just like analyzing like exactly what happened. It's terrifying.
He leaves the person suit behind, right? In
exactly.
That moment.
Yes,
he's
the veil
like,
is lifted. 100%. Yes.
Yes. The veil is lifted, and like he's like, oh, I know how I can make the rest of this story go. I know how to manipulate the characters in my book. Like, it really feels like that. And I know how to manipulate the characters in my twisted game, kind of thing. Like,
and it's, you know, it's been a while since we've mentioned our theme about revelations, and I want to talk about like Jack coming to these conclusions, right? Of leaping to these and coming to these revelations of like the possibility that Will could be this serial killer. And just you know, you just hope that it's not true. Like you could put yourself in Jack and be like, this cannot possibly be true. I couldn't have fucked up this bad, right? I couldn't be this wrong about somebody.
Yeah, I think at the same, I don't think that Jack feels very responsible for this. I think, you know, it's very clear in the way that he was playing like, oh, I didn't know about this. That like, if it ever came down to it, he would never even think that he should have been more responsible for Will.
Yes. So Will and Abigail are flying to Minnesota, and we saw Will earlier kind of not looking great. And here he looks even worse. He's starting to be very sweaty, starting to feel obviously kind of out of his element a little bit. And Abigail begins to tell this story about, not a story, but she kind of makes this conversation of like, next week was supposed to be my mother's birthday. We're going to go do this hike. All the family, we're going to go together. And Will's like, well, I could take you. Will, and even Abigail is like, I think that would make me pretty sad. Some places are stained now, and some people too. I know I am. And Will just like stares at her as she says this.
And like, he's staring at her like as she is wearing red, right? Like she is like literally visually stained with Hannibal's influence.
It's so good. It's so good. They arrive at the hunting cabin in Minnesota, and Abigail looks more and more distressed as time is going on. They walk upstairs into the antler trophy room, and Will is profusely sweating at this point. He says that the copycat knew Garrett Jacob Hobbs enough to know about this place. And then I went back and I listened to this several times, and for whatever reason, subtitles weren't working for me. I interpreted this sentence as, I wanted to understand him. I felt like I had to understand him. And the reason I'm saying that as a question is like, because I think it could be he, as in like copycat killer, like he was talking about the copy killer, but he's also now talking about himself. And I don't know if this was specifically done because Will is in a confused state of mind at this point, or if it was just the way that the line is. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, everything that we've talked about so far on this show has been about like the walls coming down in Will's mind. And I think that maybe here, like, there's so much blurriness, so much melting down, so much breaking down that like, I don't know that Will really makes a difference between Garrett Jacob Hobbs himself and the copycat, which is exactly what we were talking about before, right? That like, there seems to be this connection between these three men that is just like growing and growing and growing.
Yes, absolutely. And Abigail asks if Will hunts, which she seems to be trying to almost distract him away from this conversation. Like, she seems very, very nervous. And Will says, no, I fish. And she says, well, that's the same thing. The one you stalk, the other you lure. And again, Will makes a connection. He has a revelation as he looks at her and says, are you more of a hunter or a fisher? and he stalks up next to her in a very threatening manner. And you could tell like Abigail is afraid, and he kind of like bites off the end of his words when he says, "Did you fish or did you hunt?" And she says, "I was the lure."
This was such a scary moment. And all I could think about was Hannibal like completing Will's lure in his house in the first few episodes. Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yes.
And it's at this moment that Abigail says, "Well, Hannibal told you, right? Like Hannibal told me that you would protect me and keep a secret." And again, revelation after revelation, he realizes that Abigail not only killed Nick Boyle, but has been helping her father kill those girls. And he sees himself in his mind lifting her up and slamming her on the antlers, as we saw Georgia early in this episode, as we saw Cassie Boyle in the first episode. But as this happens, he kind of comes to and realizes that she's behind him. He's been hallucinating again. Yeah. And he accuses her of killing the girls, of being the copycat. And she's like, "I thought you were the copycat." she's confused and very concerned about his well-being. She's like, "You need to go into a hospital.
Something's wrong with you," she says. And like, there's a part of me, I have in my notes, like when you're like, she says that she thinks he's the copycat. I'm like, I blame Freddie for this, right? Because she's the one who's been like, "Oh, Will Graham. But really, let us not blame a woman for what Hannibal has done, right? Like, because this is all orchestrated by Hannibal.
Yes.
He's made sure that different people have different pieces of information. He is triangulating people very skillfully, might I add. But he is like, it's really awful because, and I kept thinking, I'm like, if you guys just talked it through and called Jack right now, like, this would be solved. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, but just because everybody is so weary of everybody else because of Hannibal's influence, boom, there you go. You've got that.
It's at this point Will fades out again. He loses touch with reality. And when he comes to, he's on an airplane, an empty airplane, by himself, no Abigail in sight. It looks like he just fell asleep in the airplane, and the stewardess is like, "Hey, you need to get the fuck out of we're trying to clean this place. Why are you here?" Yeah. And obviously he's very freaked out because what could have happened.
I mean, honestly, I was watching this. I was like, I'm not even scared anymore. I'm just waiting for the inevitable. Like, I'm just like, she's dead. Like, I don't, whatever.
We see Abigail go back to her family home, and Hannibal is there waiting for her. And it's this very poignant moment where she rushes into his arms and they embrace. And he, I think, genuinely says that he was worried about her and wants to know where Will is. And she says that she left Will at the cabin, that Will knows everything. And he says, "So does Jack Crawford." And Abigail, going back to our theme, not to keep hammering this home, but she has this realization, this revelation that, oh, I'm trapped. I can't run. Yep. Hannibal can't protect me from the FBI. I can't do anything. And she asked Hannibal, "Did he kill Marissa?" And just an incredible moment of half-truth. Hannibal responds, "They will believe he did. They will believe he killed others too." And man, what a sentence! What just a sentence that is! What a response that is!
Well, so that's the thing, right? Hannibal is kind of like leaving behind all of the well-crafted, like, excuses and half-truths. I think that this is incredibly true. Like, I think this is a full truth, right? They will believe he did. Like, this is enough because, again, Abigail, oh my God, I cannot say this woman's name. Abigail is, like, smart enough to understand what is going on. She's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?"
Yes.
Right?
And she starts to put it together. She says, "Hey, Will always said that the person that called my dad that day, it was also the copycat killer." And she knows that Hannibal called. And she says, why did you call? And Hannibal confesses, and this feels like a confession almost. Like, it feels like an honest truth, which I think Hannibal very rarely tells people, except in moments like this where lies are unimportant, right? Where something dramatic is about to happen, something inevitable is about to happen. And he says he wanted to let her father know that Will was coming because he was curious what would happen. And he was curious what would happen to her when he killed Marissa. And she, again, revelation after revelation, realizes like, oh, Hannibal is the copycat killer. Yeah. This is the person that killed my friend. This is the person that killed Cassie Boyle to impersonate my dad. This is the person that I've been looking to guide me, to help me, and to protect me. This is who that person is.
This was really such a mindfuck for me, because you had warned me in like episode 1 that Hannibal is a chaos gremlin. And I just want to be very clear that I believed you, right? Like we've had this conversation a couple of times and I'm like, I believe you. I can't, it doesn't make sense in my mind, right? Like from what I had seen of Hannibal on this show, I was like, I just don't understand because it doesn't, like he seems like he's got a master plan, right? Like he was planning all of this. But here, like we really do find out that no, he was literally making it up as he went along. And like, I personally think that is much scarier than him having a master plan, because like then how do you even know like what his whims are going to ask of him like tomorrow or the next day, right? Like this is somebody who is to some degree unpredictable, which is worse. It's so much worse, Jeremy.
You know, I think it's extra scary too, because if you think about the way that he wants to push people to see what will happen, but that at the same time he's so thoughtful about what he's doing, about the way he's pushing people, and about the way he protects himself. He's so stringent about the way he protects himself that it appears as if he has a master plan. Yeah, like his ability to be a chaos gremlin doesn't necessarily negate his ability to have a master plan at the same time, right? Like it just comes naturally to him. And the thing that I think about that I don't think it ever even gets remarked upon, but I always come back to it, is when he's attacked in his office by String Guy, whose name after he kills String Guy, he just very casually knocks over the statue.
Tobias! There you go.
There we go.
Oh my God. It just came back to me.
He finally, he very casually like knocks over the statue, or the table that the statue was standing on. And like, that's a moment of chaos. And he just very like instinctively like manipulates the situation to go a different direction than to focus on him. Right. And so that's what he's been doing. He's been a fucking chaos gremlin this entire time, pushing people, seeing what they're going to do, seeing what he could do with Will Graham, and at the same time like laying these little traps and these little things around to protect himself. So it's even worse. It's not that he's even one or the other, it's that he can be both at the same time, which is fucking frightening to me. Like it's just
you're right,
mind-boggling to me. What a character Hannibal is.
Seriously. I just I'm like, I know I've said this every episode so far, but I just don't understand how it can get worse. And I know that it does. It has to, right? Like just through natural escalation of the narrative. But like, I just like, this is so bad already. Like, I just don't. And it's so funny because transcribing episode 6, I was like, oh, we're really getting to the meat and potatoes of how evil Hannibal is. And I'm just like, oh, you poor sweet summer child. Like
6 episodes later, you're like, uh-oh, this is a problem.
Like he was so nice there.
He begins to talk to her about Nick Boyle, who he says was more important for having been killed by her, that Nick changed her in some fundamental way. And Abigail is kind of too horrified to really process what he's saying. She just asked, how many people have you killed? And he, in the creepiest way possible, says, many more than your father. And then she like very plaintively asks, like, are you going to kill me? And he reaches over and like strokes her face and says, I'm so sorry, Abigail. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you in this life. And that's where the episode ends, which is so frightening.
Well, again, like I'm kind of wondering, let me just have a look because I want to see, I'm looking at Potage here. And this is literally also how the episode ends in potage, right?
Is it
like
really?
They are. Yes, it's like it's the episode where it ends where they're talking about like, you know, I'm nothing like your father. We didn't honor any part of him. I'm nothing. Yeah, I'm nothing like your dad. And then I'll keep your secret and I'll keep yours. Like they're in his library. And I'm just like, this fucking show, man. Like,
oh man, yeah. This is intense. This is like, and I just Abigail is such a like she just doesn't deserve any of this at all. Like any of this stuff from her father, she doesn't necessarily even deserve anything that Will has been trying. Like Will's like desperate attempt to be like, I'll take you on the birthday trip you were going to take with your mom is so cloying and just half-assed, and like she doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve what Hannibal is doing to her by any stretch of the imagination. Like
yeah, Abigail basically becomes like that child of emotionally immature parents, right? Like to the most extreme possible degree. But that's I think what is going on, where she has to manage the emotions of Will, but also like to a certain degree Hannibal's. And the moments that she no longer is able to manage those, and she does something that he doesn't like, well, then he kills her.
Yeah.
Because I assume that's what's going on, right? I assume that she will be dead in the next episode.
I mean, she's a risk, right? Like she's the cops are surrounding her, like, and she knows things about Hannibal that he doesn't want the police to know, that Jack Crawford to know. So he's got to take care of that situation.
Well, there you go. It's like this idea of like, you've played enough with your plaything. So you've played enough. So I think he had a similar plan for Abigail and for Will, right? Like I was saying, like different people respond differently to his manipulations. And I think like he accomplished it with Abigail, right? He made her into a killer. And because she's like, I felt good when I killed him. Like I should have killed my dad. Like she is, like he says, she is changed from all of this. Did not have a good becoming, this one. And
when your becoming becomes terrible.
Yes, exactly. And so that's exactly what happened to Abigail. And so now that's why he feels so comfortable telling her, like, you know, I was curious, because he knows that he's going to kill her. He's like, oh, I can step out. The veil can lift with this one, because she is not going to live to tell the tale, right?
Exactly. That's why he can tell her the truth. That's when lies begin not to matter anymore. When the truth doesn't matter, because he knows he has to deal with this situation in a definitive way.
Well, then the question is, what's going to happen with Will Graham, right? Because I know that we have 2 more seasons, so I assume that whatever is, you know, right? But before we get into that, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Does Hannibal see himself as God? Is that what's going on?
I don't. So, extremely excellent question.
Okay.
And it's, I don't know the answer 100% for sure. I think Hannibal sees himself as, This may be my comic book brain talking.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm curious.
I almost think that Hannibal considers himself almost an evolution of human, because of the way that he views the world, because of his heightened senses, because of his incredible intelligence, because of the way that he processes things, because of the way that he deals with memory, which we haven't even really gotten into yet. I think he views himself as having a higher ability to interpret the world than most people around him. So that's when, and you oftentimes see this in I said comic books, but I guess media in general, where a very intelligent or a book smart person is like, well, ethics don't matter, right? Like your puny ethics don't really matter. It's not the good of the people. It's I'm going to do the good for everybody, whatever. And so to Hannibal, I think the reason that he is, there's a reason that he's reaching for family. And then B, there's a reason that he wants that family to be like him. There's a reason that he wants Will to turn into the person he thinks that Will is and should be. And I think that there's like a almost deity-like mindset, because he is just, there's no doubt in his mind that he's right. There's never a doubt in his mind that he has ever been wrong in doing this, right? Like even with Abigail, I don't think that he thinks that he was wrong for going through this process, but he just regrets the fact that it wasn't protected enough for him to finish the process. So I don't know that he views himself as God, as the creator, as somebody who, can design things like this. But I think he views himself as somebody that is supposed to kind of handhold evolution a little bit. And evolution is probably the wrong word, but handhold the becoming. Right?
I was going to say the becoming. Do you mean the becoming? Yeah.
But only for the people he views worthy, right? Not to the insects that don't deserve to have their organs, or the people that are rude to him, or the people that get in his way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I actually really, really like that. I think that's I'm going to keep that in mind as we go through, because the comment, Bedelia's comment about like, yes, thank God. I was just like, oh, okay. And you also told me that like he has a fascination with like churches getting destroyed. And there's also the whole like, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you in this life, like almost implying that maybe he could have some sort of power over her in her next one. I'm just like, what? What are you saying, Hannibal?
That's a very eerily similar sentiment to what Will said about Georgia Mansion, right? Like I couldn't, she was so misunderstood in her life. I don't want her to be misunderstood in her death. It's a very similar statement of, I can't protect you in this life.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true.
This show. I've been trying to think about shows that have this level of that go this hard, for sure. to talk, to say the teenage way, I guess, to talk like a child. It's really difficult for me to come up with shows that are this good, that go into this level of characterization. And there's stuff like The Wire, but The Wire is such a realistic depiction of what happens in police investigations and crime and things like that. Like, it's not the murder husband fantasy that I like this is. And also, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, like, I feel like this stuff, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode that this entire show feels like fanfic in a way, and like the best way possible. And it does. Like, it feels like this is finally like, oh my God, this is everything I've ever been horny for on NBC. Like, I can't believe they're showing my horny fantasies on NBC.
I know. I can't believe they're showing my horny fantasies on NBC.
Can't believe they just tweeted it out.
That's the title of the episode. No, yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. I think like it has a dreamlike quality to it. Like, even though it's realistic in the way that like there's, it's based in quote unquote the real world, there's an element of like, there's almost an element of fantasy to it, just the way that like it's explained. I don't even know how to describe that really. I'll think about that. But yeah, I agree with you. I cannot believe that we are at the finale
already.
Next, in 2 weeks, on like January the millionth or whatever it's going to be. If I had a few like maybe bonkers predictions for the finale, I think that Hannibal, having dealt with Abigail, is obviously going to try to frame Will Graham for it. I think that if he followed Bedelia's advice, he would probably kill Will Graham. But I'm not sure Hannibal really is willing to do that. I think he's like too engrossed with Will in general to be able. Well, no, he's able, but to really want to. Because I was going to say, I think he's going to kill him, but I don't think so. I think. And like, I'm kind of also wondering, like, is Will's realization of who Hannibal is going to come at the end of this season, or is it going to be later? And plus there's the whole like, is he going to be cured of his encephalitis or not? Like, so I don't know. I think either way could work, but I definitely think that Hannibal is going to fuck up in some way.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I also agree that the Hannibal will probably fuck up in some way or fashion.
You're saying this the way you're saying this. Oh my God.
I'm so careful with the way that I speak on this podcast. So like, it's so fun to get caught up in like, because sometimes I get caught up in the fantasy that I haven't seen all these episodes, so I'm just like, what will happen to Bedelia? And I genuinely mean it. And then sometimes I'm like, yes, I think Hannibal will fuck up, and I think it's in some really interesting and unusual ways.
I'm so excited.
I'm curious. So just to pick your prediction brain a little bit, like,
sure.
Will's going to get framed by Hannibal.
Yes.
Hannibal might mess up. Where do you think like some of our other characters are going to end up as? So like for example, Jack Crawford or Alana Bloom. Like if Hannibal is framing Will, and if he's going to continue with that, like how do you think they're going to interpret that?
I was like, let's start with Alana. No, let's start with Jack. And then I got annoyed. So if I start with Jack, I think that Jack is going to be like, I think that Jack is going to take this personally. He's going to make it about himself, the way that he does, the way that we've seen him do with his wife, the way that we've seen him do with Miriam Lass. It sounds like I really hate Jack, but I don't. Like, he is probably like the most human character in this entire show. And I think maybe that's why I sound like I'm really hard on him. But I think he's going to make this about himself. I think he's going to be like, you know,
I did this to Will or whatever.
Yeah, well, no, not I did this to Will, but because I don't think he would take responsibility for it.
Oh, okay.
But I think so. Or
I shouldn't have let Will do this to himself.
Yes, exactly. Right? Like I maybe something, you know how like really shitty people are like, everybody around me just ends up like in a bad place. Like, oh, well, you know, anyway. So I kind of think that like he is going to like go into some kind of spiral of like all my trainees end up like in terrible places. All like my wife is going to die. Like, you know, like the way that Jack Crawford would kind of like make it about him without actually taking responsibility for any of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. I think Alana, I'm annoyed with Alana too. But I think Alana is going to not believe it, but also believe it just because she has hard eyes for Will. And I think that she is going to maybe explain it to herself or make it make sense to herself by saying, you know, like I was blinded by the fact that I liked him, that I had feelings for him. But I don't think that she is going to fully believe it. But I think that's how she's going to like try to make sense of it for herself.
Well, everybody, in 2 weeks, we'll find out how right Mary is. Or
or how wrong.
Yes, I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting. Mary's probably going to find out in about 20 minutes.
Absolutely. The second we're done, you're going to get a notification. Mary has pressed play on Hannibal, episode 13.
Yeah, it's very funny. I get, I don't know if we talked about that before, but I get... anytime someone accesses my Plex server, I get like, you know, so-and-so has started playing so-and-so. And so it's always very funny to me when we finish the episode and it just pops up immediately. Like one time I didn't even make it to my kitchen. I looked at my phone and I was like, damn, girl is ready. I guess specifically about this episode, I like this episode a lot as a penultimate kind of setup episode to the finale. Yeah. I think that it's just a tour de force on performances by, of course, you know, Mads and Hugh and pretty much everybody, but like Mads, Hugh, and I don't know the name of the woman that plays Abigail, to be honest with you. But the actor that plays Abigail, just an absolute tour de force of performances. Yeah. The way this show continually gets better over time is so remarkable to me. Like, we talk about it a lot. Like, it really felt like it was going to be a police procedural at first of like, oh, there's going to be a monster of the week and we're going to go solve a crime and then we're going to move to the next one. And like Hannibal Lecter is going to eat somebody and nobody's going to know about it for a while. But the way this show was like obviously plotted from the beginning, like so intricately, and that all of these pieces are starting to like fall in place and all of these things that Hannibal has been doing are starting to fall in place. And like the repercussions for things that he didn't plan for are starting to happen. And Will's descent into like madness, more or less, is all kind of leading up to this huge crescendo, and it's just so fun to watch. It's just so good. There's just not another show like this, I think.
I was actually thinking, I'm like, is there anything like this? Because like I am loving this.
You know what? The closest I could probably, and it doesn't have the like magical realism aspect, but the closest to this is probably Killing Eve. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh no, I haven't actually.
But it's I remember when that show came on, it was compared to Hannibal because instead of murder husbands, it's murder wives. But it's.
It's a sapphic Hannibal.
It's a sapphic Hannibal. Yes,
I will be watching.
You should go binge it. You should absolutely go binge it.
Yes.
As a warning, I have not seen the last season, but I saw a lot of like negative feedback about the last season. So
I know. Yeah, I know how it ends. Actually.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yes.
I do not.
I know how it ends.
We watched like the first however many seasons there are, like besides the last one. And it was. It's the relationship between the two main characters, and that remind me a lot about Hannibal and Will. So
I'm very excited. Okay, I'll go. I'm gonna go watch that this weekend.
Yeah, it's on my Plex, so go get after it.
Oh, great! Thank you. Oh no, that's gonna be so embarrassing. You're gonna get all the notifications of when I start playing. You're gonna be DMing me like, Mary, stop.
If it makes you feel better, sometimes like if I'm doing stuff like my focus on my phone, that just eliminates all of those like notifications, so I might not get every single one. So
okay, good.
I guess if you don't have any final thoughts, then we will move into our review section.
Absolutely. Jeremy, do you want to get started with your review?
Sure. I'm going to give this 4 stars. This Revele, am I doing that right? I got Revele. Oh man, I just lost it.
Relevé.
Say again.
Relevé.
Ooh, that R is hard. Revele.
You can roll it. It's fine. I actually I was listening to somebody who was speaking like Cajun French, and they roll their R's, so you can roll your R's. Yeah. It's fine.
This was bold, revealing flavor after flavor that called back to the earlier dishes, making me think those earlier dishes were built specifically to hide future moments from us. What about your review, Mary?
I will also give it 4 stars because with reminders of the smooth and striking potage from earlier this season, these breathtaking relevés are revealing the nature of the potage's chilling aftertaste and undisclosed elements.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We're continually amazed to see people that we don't know and people that we do know pop up in comments and tweets and reviews and like numbers going up, which is kind of not super meaningful, but also very meaningful. And I just, I know I keep saying this at the end of every episode, but we appreciate it so much. I believe we kind of made a decision on a feedback episode, right? Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can go ahead.
So we do want to collect your feedback. It's going to be an interesting situation because we're probably going to continue recording. And then just
yeah, this is coming out in January.
Yes. And then we'll schedule the feedback episode kind of after all of these episodes come out, but before season 2 comes out. So it'll be kind of an interesting one of those podcast timey-wimey situations that we're going to have to deal with. But that means that A, we have a lot of time to reflect on season 1, and B, we have plenty of time to collect all of your feedback. So please email us, rooteatspodcast@gmail.com.
That's exactly it.
You can leave, you can DM us on Twitter. You can add us on Twitter. You can leave comments on our YouTube page. Do all of that stuff. Let us know that you want to go in the feedback. If you put comments on Spotify that you want us to read on the podcast, please just specifically say that in the comments. Say like for the feedback episode, so I know to copy and paste it. And we're going to read all of your stuff. We're going to have a guest to come on and talk about season 1 of Hannibal. And we'll have had months to reflect about season 1. It'll be fascinating to go back.
A guest who we've already sort of narrowed down to one person, but we haven't asked them yet.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
I haven't asked them.
Okay, I thought that. Okay, well, I thought that y'all had that conversation already. So yeah.
No, I haven't yet, but I will have it today.
I also asked somebody to be the season 2 guest, so I'm already pre-booking that for us.
Ooh, that's exciting.
But I figured I would see if they wanted to before I just said it. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much. Send your feedback in. Come talk to us about Hannibal. Come tell us how right Mary has been in every single one of her predictions. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about the finale of season 1.
Unbelievable.
And until then, everybody, remember, bon appetit.
Bon appetit, everyone. I'm just amazed that people are sticking with us for like 2 hours and 15 minutes of podcast.
Yeah, well,
and that's not counting the 20 minutes of outtakes.
Yeah, I'm at 240 in Zencaster. So
Jesus Christ, Jeremy, this is insane.
And you know, some of that, like, we'll lose probably 5 to 10 minutes of that for edits or whatever, but still 2.5 hours on a 45-minute episode of television. So, and we're not even to the finale. I think the finale might hit 3 hours. I really do. I think the finale is going to be intense. It's going to be a lot. Good morning.
Oh,
there you are.
Yeah. Hi.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
You know what? I'll take okay. Oh, Thank you so much for still agreeing to record so that I can watch the finale.
Oh, this will be the highlight of my day. I can promise you.
Amazing.
And I'm recording a podcast with my buddies about Elden Ring today, which is like Dark Souls. So like this will be the highlight of my day, even with that. So.
Oh my gosh, I feel so incredibly honored to be a part of this 100%. In any way, shape, or form.
As you should. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I do. I promise. Oh my God. I just want to and I know that this isn't like the actual podcast. This is the outtakes, but I cannot believe that we are recording literally 3 days later.
Yeah, it's kind of insane if we're being honest. We're being a little crazy. A little extra. But that's okay though, because we're both obviously very excited to record. I think that means a lot comes through in the recording. Makes people excited to listen. I think people are responding to that energy.
Mm-hmm. That's good,
and hopefully it'll continue to happen, and you'll still like season 2.
I mean, I can't imagine that I would not like it. You know what I mean? I so far have loved season 1 so much as it has taken a toll on my health and my mental health.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The one I'm a little worried about is season 3.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a little.
Why?
It's just it gets a little weird. And I remember watching it for the first time, and I had some difficulty with it because it was it's very dreamlike in its execution in some ways. So I was I want to know what happens to X, Y, and Z. What's going on? What's happening? And then just but they're taking a very artistic approach to the whole thing. And when I rewatched it, I had a much better time with it. I was able to. It was one of those things of I know what happens now, so I don't. Yeah. I can just enjoy it. I don't have to have the pressure of knowing what's going to happen at the end. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, that's interesting. I always find it really interesting that shows, watching shows can be such a different experience when you're watching it for the first time versus rewatching it. And I think also this podcast does this, showcases that really well. You've got me who's freaking out about certain small things, and you're yeah, that's gonna get so much worse, Mary.
Just wait.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also that pressure. I think you and I have talked about this before of just not knowing what's going to happen, and then once you remove that pressure, you're just able to enjoy something a lot more. Autumn is a big fan of just I'll go see a movie. The good example of this is Avengers Endgame, or maybe it was Infinity War, where everybody died supposedly. And so
spoilers.
Spoilers for a 10-year-old Marvel movie that everybody on the planet has seen. But I left that movie and she was like, just tell me who died. So that when I finally watched the movie, like, I won't be stressed out about it. And I was like, well, number one,
everybody does.
Yeah. Hey, Tom Holland spoiled that a long time before I did. So
he totally did. And I love that for him.
I do too. It's so funny.
How old is Tom Holland? Because in my mind, he's like perpetually 17, but like he can't be 17 anymore.
No. But he's just got
he must be in his 30s.
He's got that short king disease, where he just looks so much younger than he probably already is. I would say mid-20s, if I had to guess.
Mid-20s? I want to look that up.
June 1st, 1996, age 28.
Oh, what a cutie.
He is a cutie. Talk about spoilers.
He looks. I'm looking at this right now. He looks 17. I'm sorry.
He looks 17. Yeah, absolutely. He'll be able to rock that Spider-Man role for a long time, which is good because I don't think anything else he's done has been particularly great. So, or at least successful. Let me rephrase. I haven't seen a lot of it. So,
I mean, the cool thing when you've done like one of those big movies is that you can do whatever the fuck you want after, right? Yeah. Like you can just do shitty movies if you want to, because like for the art of it, right? Like it doesn't matter.
He was in that adaptation of Uncharted, which is a video game, which is a real weird video game to adapt because it's basically just the video game adaptation of an Indiana Jones movie already. So it's like, so now we're just like three, like it's like a Xerox copy. It gets weirder and weirder the more copies you make. So,
this is why I kind of get mad when people like put down fan fiction, because I'm like, I'm sorry. Okay, like let's think about this for a second. But what is Hannibal the show if not fan fiction from like
Brian Fuller?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like from everything that you're telling me about the books and Silence of the Lambs and all of that stuff, I'm like, this feels like, not an AU, but almost, right? Like an in-universe, like a canon verse fic.
Yeah. This is very much like the comic book stuff of like, oh, there's now we have a different universe or a different version of this character, or we're going to reboot to the Ultimates. And so, now Spider-Man doesn't have any of the baggage. We're going to spend the next 5 years giving him more baggage, new baggage to deal with.
Why are they always so mean to Spider-Man?
They are. In the Ultimates universe, he dates Kitty Pryde, which is my favorite X-Men character. Or one of my favorite X-Men characters. So. But yeah, I think about that
Good
a lot
for them.
because like I can't wait for you to experience some of the other like I guess the books or the movies or whatever, because like this relationship between Will and Hannibal just does not exist anywhere else. Like you can't, like this just doesn't appear anywhere. Like they have in the books, like they have this like antagonistic relationship, right? But like none of this stuff like as detailed and as deep as this exists anywhere, and it's very, very like I've experienced a lot of people's viewpoints on a show that have changed my opinion on a show. So like you'll like see somebody, especially with Supernatural, you see somebody fixate on like a certain thing and like extrapolate this whole like mental idea of something about Supernatural, and I'll read it and I'll be like, I would have never thought of that, and this rules. And I feel like that's what Brian Fuller did. And Brian Fuller was like, I'm going to take these two middle-aged white men and I'm going to make them kiss or murder each other, or both,
or we don't know, or both. Yeah, exactly. At the same time.
Our podcast art is making more and more sense as we go along, huh?
Our podcast, what, sorry?
I said our podcast art is making more and more sense.
Oh, our podcast art, yes. I mean, it's always, actually, I want to have another look at it. Because, like, lately I've been thinking about all the things that, like, you kind of, like, subtly put into the previous episodes that I just didn't pick up on. Because doing the transcription, I just transcribed episode 6 not too long ago, and I was just like,
Yeah, it's so much fun. Dropping just the tiniest hints or just confirming stuff and being like, yep, it's gonna get worse. Like you have more of this to look forward to. Like we will return this conversation. So it's super good. I've been having a great time with this podcast. I had to tell Autumn because we're recording this. So we recorded on Sunday. She left Sunday morning. we recorded last on Sunday, and she left Sunday morning.
Yes.
So I watched the next episode, this episode that we're talking about today, the Sunday afternoon. Without her, which is fine because we usually watch these things twice. Like, so I usually make notes and then like we watch them again like before. I just assumed we would record like the next Sunday, like we have been. And so like I had to tell her like, she's like, Jeremy, I've seen this show like 3 times, and I'm like, yeah, but we're rewatching it together. That's the important thing.
I love this so much. Oh, Autumn. Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot of stuff for me going on this weekend. Like it's my 10-year-old's birthday party, even though it's like New Year's when people are going to be able to listen to this. But yeah, it's a birthday party for you know, the one who will be 11-year-old.
The one who will be 11-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, did you have like a video game themed party last year? Do I remember that right?
Oh my God. Yes. We went to an esports
That's
place.
what it was. Yeah. I knew this stuck in my brain for some reason. Because I just thought it was just like a bunch of 10, or I guess a bunch of 9-year-olds at the time, a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds running around playing esports. And just it's like, I don't have kids, obviously, but it just seems like a parenting nightmare. I'm just like, Oh
my gosh, it was. It was. And like the place was like, it was a small room. And so like the noise was just awful. Ooh. That is literally what decided me to get like earplugs, like the loop earplugs. Mm-hmm. I was like, I can't do this. This year it's going to be in another esports place that is actually going to be closed for the party. Oh, okay. So it's only going to be the kids that we invited that are going to be there, which makes my life so much easier. Cause corralling, like 10 to 15 10-year-olds is a thing.
Yeah, I can't possibly imagine, to be honest with you. Like that just seems like the worst. I don't want to sound like one of those parentless or one of those childless dickheads that are like kids are horrible or whatever. But yeah, I just like that idea. Like that just seems like a lot of tension, basically.
It is because they're also like really excited because it's a birthday party, and then you feed them cake, and then you let them watch screens, and it's honestly like just the worst. Oh, yeah. Altogether. And I mean, now like I've been working with kids since the fall, and it's not the same working with kids as it is like hosting a birthday party. Let me tell you, like not the same at all.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, every single teacher that's listening to this went like, "No shit, Mary."
Yes, exactly.
It does take that perspective, though. One of my favorite birthday parties was at we didn't have esports back in the day, but I think the 90s version of esports was probably like a Chuck E. Cheese, or the 80s version of a esports place was a Chuck E. Cheese.
I guess so, yeah.
And that was just like, it's kind of the same thing. Pizza, video games, whatever, like not actual video games, but like, throwing balls into holes and things like that. But weird monsters walking around and wishing you happy birthday. Just, incredibly overstimulating for a child and just so much fun.
Yes. Well, there you go. I remember those birthday parties, like where we would go to like arcades or whatnot. And it was just so much fun. And I remember parents hating it. And I was like, why do you hate this? And now I'm like, I hate this.
This is why.
This is why parents hated it.
We have discovered the reason for the hatred.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, it'll be fun. It's 2 hours. I'm going to feed them pizza. I'm going to make it so simple this year because every year I try to make something like nice and healthy food. This year I'm like, no, fuck no. You're getting pizza. You're getting
cake,
chips. Yeah, and you're getting cake. That's what you're getting, right? Like, and the little like loot bag or whatever, I'm not even trying. I'm just buying candy. I'm like, it's Halloween soon. You guys are just getting candy. Like,
it'll be fun. Like,
you'll be your parents' problem after.
It's funny that like you probably, I think like the expectation would be that the kid would have the most fun with that because like, like my dietary restrictions are off and I can do whatever I want to. But like, it almost seems like you have a lot of relief of just being like, eat the junk. I don't have to worry about anything that you're doing. Eat the junk.
Exactly. Honestly, yeah. Like, cause that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I've had to let go of a lot of like expectations and not standards, but like unrealistic standards. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Especially because I've been so tired lately and I'm just like, I can't do this. So you're getting pizza. I ordered cake. It'll be great. You'll be so happy for all of this. And you get to play video games.
Chicken nuggets on a Monday night? We're going to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah.
We love chicken nuggets on a Monday night though.
I mean, I love chicken nuggets anytime. Like they're kind of like, they're like,
oh yeah.
If I'm eating chicken nuggets like on a random night and I tell my best friend Rochelle about this, she will be like, "Oh, what's wrong?"
you went to the comfort food. What's going on?
Yeah, like what's going on? Are you okay?
Autumn was growing up. Autumn was she wasn't very food venturous at all.
Mm-hmm.
So like most of her meals growing up were chicken nuggets and French fries. Like that was just kind of how she was. And it wasn't until like we got together, and I had no part in this. I just made her eat a tomato one time. That was about the extent of my involvement. But she kind of exploded like when she started cooking. And that was her kind of thing of like, oh, I'm going to go make this stuff. And then she just got more and more into it. But it's interesting. Like I find it fascinating that people are like kind of get like chicken nuggets are kind of like the perfect food in some ways. Like they're just a perfect little morsel. Yeah, I love them. She likes the Wendy's nuggies though. I don't like the Wendy's nuggies. I like the McDonald's.
Oh, that's an interesting choice. Mm-hmm. That's an unexpected choice. I have
Agreed.
To say.
Yeah.
Who wasn't expecting? Yeah.
I can divorce her if you think that that's appropriate.
No. What?
We have so few problems that the ones that we do have are exacerbated.
Oh my God! Imagine.
No, do not want to.
No, for sure. Oh my God. I don't know where to go from there. To be honest.
Yeah. Sorry about joking about divorcing my wife, everybody. She's great. I won't.
I can just imagine people just like screaming at whatever it is that they're listening to this podcast on, like either their car radio or like their earpods, their phone, their computer, just being like, "No,
Jeremy, what are you doing?
Don't joke about that."
Absolutely, do not joke about that. No, if anything ever happens to me in Autumn, it'll definitely be because it's my fault. I will have done something stupid. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I will. But I can't imagine like at this point. I mean, knock on wood or whatever. Like,
yes.
Because things happen. But no, I don't know why I'm defending my marriage all of a sudden. This is
I know, right? Like, I don't understand.
Autumn, when you're listening to this in January, go ahead and skip past all of this. This is getting a little strange. I told I walked into the physical therapy clinic yesterday.
Yes,
and a man had walked in before me, and he was an older man. And as I walked in, he was standing away from the counter, and he kind of gestured as if like to go ahead. And for some reason, I don't know what possessed me. I just looked at him and said, "How are you doing today, young man?" And I don't know why I called this dude a young man. Like I don't know what possessed me in a million years. And he's like, "I'm doing great, son." And I'm like, I don't know what is this interaction? What is happening?
Oh my God, Jeremy! What happened to you? Have you gotten like 20 years older in the past like week or so?
I don't know. My social interactions have gotten very strange lately. So I don't know how to deal. If I'm not talking into a microphone, I don't really know how to deal. And honestly, if you listen to any of my other podcasts, like most of the time, I don't know what I'm doing on the microphone either. So,
what's really funny is that there's a link there, but you're gonna have to bear with me, okay? So I was running yesterday, and oftentimes, like when I'm running, like people are like encouraging. Some people are a bit weird or creepy or whatever, but that doesn't happen all that often. Mostly people are just either supportive, they say hi, like just whatever. And yesterday there was this old man in his car. And when I tell you that I can only assume that this man was probably the grumpiest old man I have ever seen, probably the grumpy old man on the block kind of thing. And he just like stared at me, like sneered almost, right? Like with like his eyes, like closing almost, looked at me and then gave me a thumbs up as he drove by me.
All right.
And I sort of feel like maybe you're becoming a grumpy old man,
or like
so, just like, yeah, there you go. You're like embracing the older man persona.
Oh God, I hope not. I hope I'm not one of those dudes that are like, your granddaughter is beautiful. Like, I don't want to be that guy. You know what I'm saying?
That's not at all what I was saying.
That grumpy old man is definitely calling someone's granddaughter beautiful. Like, not in a creepy way, but like it's just creepy that he said it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah,
like, He's very sincere with his compliment, but also you're just like, Grandpa, don't say that. Like, it just sounds weird when you say that. Like,
because it sounds really intense, right? Because he's like making an effort to make a compliment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
What's that old song? You say it best when you say nothing at all. Like, let's just do that. just don't say anything at all. Oh, Lord.
And that's why, like, he just looked like so intense, like in his car. I was like, oh my God, what is going on here? I'm just like looking away, and then I just see him like with his thumbs up, and I'm like, oh, thanks. Like, that's nice.
I get so annoyed about, so I mean, like, the thing that's happened down here, especially with Ring cameras, and like local community Facebook groups, is like people will just post a picture of somebody and be like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "It's probably just some dude in your neighborhood walking because it's he has a heart condition." Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, why do you care? What is going on? But people are so like involved in other people's business nowadays, like with the Nextdoor app and everything. I just it really irritates me.
I don't know why I was looking at that, but yesterday I was also looking like to see, because sometimes like when you start running for like an hour, you start getting bored, even if you're listening to a really good podcast, right? So yesterday I was like, let's look at who has a Ring camera in this neighborhood. And I was kind of surprised to see that there weren't that many.
Oh, really?
I'm like, it hasn't in this neighborhood anyway, I guess, like in the neighborhood that I run in, like there aren't that many Ring cameras.
I have so many issues with all of this camera stuff. Even though like I have cameras all over our house, not inside the house. I always find that super weird. But like we have cameras, but it's like a closed system. Like it's not Amazon doesn't own it. Like you can't. The police can't subpoena my video camera feeds or anything like that. I guess they probably could try, but like
they could, right? Yeah, I suppose,
but it's all closed. Like I could just go pour some water over it and they'd be fucked. So, like,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that's also like, that's so important for like just general privacy. Like, because I was thinking like, if I'm running in the neighborhood, like people can technically like track me with Ring cameras, right? Like if the government really wanted to, they could, right? They don't, because I'm not that interesting, but like,
if it's just the blonde chick from Criminal Minds, right? Like she could do that, no problem.
Yes, exactly. I mean, she can know. It's okay. Yeah. I would tell her where I am. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just like, it's making the cops' job easier in a way. And I'm just like, why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very strange to me, the camera business. Although, this past weekend, Autumn's dad told her, that one of the horses got caught in the fence.
Oh no!
And Autumn like put a lot of time and effort and thought into when we like built the barn and everything. Like we spent a lot of time, and I say we, like I was the listening board, I was the soundboard, because she's the expert on this stuff, and I was just like, well, maybe, and she's like, no, that's not right. I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, sometimes you need that, like you need somebody to just, of course.
So the fencing are just wooden poles, and then there's this like smooth black cord that goes in between them that's electric. But so it's not like barbed wire, it's not braid, which you see like electro braid in a lot of places. And she did that because like what's supposed to happen is like you touch it and you bounce off of it, and it doesn't like wrap around, right? Like the horse doesn't get caught in it. So we hear like, oh, one of the horse's legs get caught or something. And sure enough, like I walk outside and I see like one of the cords is a little loose, and I'm like, So she looks it up on the camera, and sure enough, like one of the most delightful things horses do, because they're so huge, is just like they lay down and flip over their back like they're a dog and like kick their legs out, like they like scratch them. Scratch themselves in the sand or whatever. And Meatball was doing that and kicked out a little too far and got his leg zappied. So it was nice having cameras to see exactly what happened with that.
Yeah.
But also Meatball had his leg hurt. So.
Oh, poor Meatball. Was he okay?
He's fine. It would have been a lot worse if she had not done the right cabling or whatever, because it could have wrapped around. And she's like, I've seen on Facebook groups and stuff, she's seen that electro braid stuff, like literally like it wraps around, and because it's still shocking, it doesn't stop, like it'll just cut through the bone, not through the bone, to the bone.
Oh my God.
So this was more like almost like an abrasion, if you will, on his leg. And it was, of course, Saturday, and she's leaving. It's 5 a.m. Sunday morning, and I'm not a vet, so I'm like, do you want me to? Should I put some Neosporin on it? Like, what do I? And she's like, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. So I've been taking pictures and sending it to her just to say, hey, Meatball's okay. He's running. He's not favoring the leg. That kind of stuff. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy to know that Meatball is not like
Meatball is
badly
good.
hurt.
Yes.
Yeah. And how is Penny?
Penny's laying beside me. I just committed today.
Yes.
I was just like, I'm not going to put up with this. She got me twice while I was recording yesterday with Chris. Where I was like, I gave her a treat and then she just ate the treat and kept barking, and I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like that's she was like, I want another.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, well, if you're not gonna be in here, at least I get more treats.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm teaching her Let's Go podcast as a command, and then she just runs into the podcast room. And I put a little blanket down and she's all curled up on it, and I think as long as she has a person, she's fine. So
yeah. I'm so happy. So we have Penny. Where's Fluffy? Fluffy is right behind me. So we have all of the animals.
We have all of the animals on the podcast. Hopefully,
all of the screaming animals.
Hopefully Fluffy has some opinions of Hannibal's behavior this week.
Oh, I don't know. I think Fluffy's a little scared. He hasn't been very active during our podcast recordings lately, which is
a little
unusual for him.
A little intimidated.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how I feel about that.
You wanna do the thing? Speaking of Hannibal,
I do want to do the thing,
and then we can do the other thing, which is finish the series, which is going to be exciting. All right, I'm gonna drop a marker, and I am ready when you are.
Awesome. I'm starting to record. Oh, well, yeah, lovely. I forgot to start recording, so I'm recording now, and I also forgot to pull up my notes because I was just so excited to talk to you.
Just gonna jump in.
Just gonna. Oh my god. Okay. I feel like this day has been so long already, and I'm just like
yeah, it's somebody that got woke up at 4:30 this morning. Same girl's name.
Oh man. All right, I can do this. Let's go.